Okay, so this class today is about point names. I will do my best to make it not too long, but as you can tell, as you can tell from yesterday, it's always hard for me, and it's a difficult format on Zoom. It's because I can't demonstrate very much. It's a little bit of a theoretical class in some ways, but I'm trying. Really, it's not supposed to be theoretical. Um, the point here is really what I'm trying to do is show you how you can interpret point names and apply them. And different people are going to have different ways to do that. So one of the things I like to say in advance is, often we're looking for the secrets. We're all trained in, the ancients had the secrets. There are these family secrets and all that kind of stuff in Chinese medicine. And we're trained to think that way. So we're looking for amazing things in point names. Sometimes it's really like that, but sometimes what happens is a point name. How do you know that a point name didn't come from the imperial physician's mistress? That he just named the point after his mistress. You just don't know that. Okay. So we can't assume that every single name has some amazing thing to tell us. On the other hand, it might. So we have to kind of keep looking for the pointers. And the whole point of this for us is to see if the name inspires an idea in us, a treatment idea, or confirms an idea that we already have, but ultimately it's going to have to be tested on someone's body. It's going to prove itself correct or incorrect in actual practice. Okay? Now, one has to be a little bit careful because associating, just because a point has a same name or partial name, one of the characters is the same with another point, does not mean that that was intentional, that they come together, that they resonate with each other. And the reason why is because Chinese medicine has a very, very long history, and China has always been very populated. Okay, it's not just now. There are a lot of people in China. So there's many schools of thought, and they did not necessarily all come together and cooperate when they named the names. So someone in one area and one generation may have decided on some names, and someone took a similar name and named it for a different reason altogether. So it's not like all points that have this character must mean that. Not at all. Okay. And more importantly, not all the names of points refer to treatments. Okay. We are borrowing a system, strangely enough. We are currently considered the owners of the meridian system. But actually, the originators of the system were probably not acupuncturists. Okay, they were probably people who were interested in doing meditation, geomancy, things, different kinds of things, maybe astrology. We are borrowing a system that was already in the formation. We've then contributed more, we as a profession contributed more to the system. But the system was not necessarily created at first for acupuncture. Okay? So if we're trying to say, are all these names must confirm something in acupuncture, then I think we might have some problem in being able to use all the names. So take it kind of lightly. It's really just to open our mind to ideas. There will definitely be a theme. It will not be. It will become more apparent over time. It's not going to be. I can tell you what the theme is now. The theme is now is that everything about the points is about being able to stand up. A man is vertical. Okay, so the verticality of our posture, our communication between heaven and earth, or from earth to heaven, is the theme that I'm using to interpret all the point names. Okay, so but it will become more clear over time. So you kind of know in advance that this is where we're going, but it's going to take us a while to get there. Okay, there's three. They say there's 365 points, like the number of days in a year. I'm only counting 361. I don't know, maybe I'm counting something wrong. But the point is there's many points. It's hard to make one big clear statement about them. Okay? So when we look at points, generally we are going to look at location, and the location can be what channel it's on or what part of the body it's on, things of that nature. That's going to be part of looking at a point, the name, and seeing if it makes sense. So is there a resonance there? And then often people say this point, for example, um, Andy Ellis, who wrote a book called Grasping the Wind. I often talk about you cannot grasp the wind, but that is the name of small intestine 12. So, but he interprets a lot of points by location, like Erjian, large intestine 2. It's the second space. It's the second point. I'm going to say I don't think so. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that it's the second point. It might, but that's not that. For me, the fact that it's called the second space and third large intestine channel is called the third space suggests that maybe there's no fourth space. Suggests that they might be talking about the three spaces of the large intestine. Okay, so it's different ways of looking, even at location. Certainly when it comes to function, everybody has different ideas about what the point functions are. So you will see often people will say this point by TCM does this, that, and the other. Okay, for example, the wind points are the most famous ones. Okay, gallbladder 20 takes out wind. That's why it's called the wind pool. Okay, so there's ways to interpret it according to function, but you have to accept that not everybody uses the points for the same functions. So we don't know if the people who named the point thought of that function, or the function came after the point was named. Very hard to know. Okay. Then we're looking at the body. Remember that the system was started by people who are doing astrology, geomancy, meditation, qigong, martial arts type things. So these are people who are looking at the body as a reflection of nature, of the stars, of things like that. So you see names, literally names of stars. Du 23 is the upper star, Shanqing. Okay. Ren 3 is the name for the North Star. It's called the central pole. Okay, Jizang. It doesn't. This is just a way that they're seeing the geomancy of the human body, and then you have to say, what does it reflect conceivably in some pathologies? And then you're looking at connections. How does this name of a point connect with other points with either exact same name or partial name, or very similar name by idea? Okay, and again, you can't assume that it's going to be 100% correlation. It might. Okay? And then finally, there's philosophical ideas that might be expressed by this point name, or how the area of the body is seen philosophically, and what all that stuff implies. So there's and there's obviously more ways on how to interpret point names. I'm not trying to say this is the only way and this is the complete way to interpret point names. This is just a way to do this. Okay? Now, next slide is I basically took the points, and I may have missed here or there a point that, but I don't think I missed any major things here. And I'm basically going the most common name is the character shu, to transport. Okay, there's 25 points that are named with the character shu. 12 of them are shu points of organs, actually only 11, because the pericardium is not a pericardium shu, it's a jui yin shu. Okay? And so that leaves quite a few other points with a character of shu. And the next big character is a door. And actually, it's a gate. It's a swinging door, two swinging doors, okay, together. And then center, then yang, and then you can see you can go down the list. What's interesting here is the things that we all expect to be like the big stars. Okay, so when we first went to acupuncture school, and because most of us have learned the points by numbers, not by names, and after a while maybe we picked up a name here or there, and maybe we have more of an interest over time. We expect things like Shen, spirit, Feng, wind, Qi, okay, Qi. and shui, blood. So now when you look at this, Shen has only 8 points named with the character Shen. Okay, I think there may be 2 points with the character Ling, but maybe 3. No, 3. I believe there's 3 with Ling. There's only 6 points with the character Qi. There is 6 points with the character Feng, wind. So in other words, what we expected, the TCM terms that we're using, that we want the points to be named after so that they will help us decide on what to do, they're not as popular as some other names. And if you look at the very bottom right, the character for blood is only 1 point with the character blood. Okay, and that's spleen 10, shui hai. Okay, and there's only 1 character that actually says point, and of course shu can be point also. Okay, but the character shui for cave only appears once. So just to kind of notice that that what we expected to be very popular may not be. And this is the exact same slide, basically, except I rearranged it. And here what we have is you seeing that the majority of the point, clearly, most of the points are named after some sort of movement idea, okay, or some sort of function of movement, and often related to water. In the middle, you're seeing the TCM terms, the ones that we expect there to be very big, okay? And notice that the characters yin and yang are a little bit nebulous, okay? So they're almost like, they don't help us a huge amount in interpreting point names. And then we have things that have to do with measurement and location. And then we have to do things that have to do with actual anatomies, something like bone or shoulder. There's 9 points with the character shoulder, okay? 3 with now and 6 with Jan, okay? And Liao is a very popular name, which is often translated as a bone hole. I'm going to suggest that it actually should mean something else. It should mean something that it's like the wind that pushes through. So it means to emphasize. Okay, so just to notice that we have a lot of ideas about point names that may, in this presentation, you may not get a lot of acknowledgement for, because we have different ideas about what they mean. So we saw that the character for gate, men, is one of the most popular. We will get to the shu points later. Okay, so we have to look at what do they mean by a gate? They mean that something is you're opening up for you. And the first thing to notice is that 7 of these points are on the lungs or on the diaphragm. Okay, so you can actually see these points that have the character men, and you can see 2 points with just door. That's stomach 13 and UB42, and actually stomach 13 and UB42 have the character for door in them. Okay, so that's a single door, whereas versus the double door, the gate. Okay, so 7 of them are on the lungs or on the diaphragm. Okay, and then you have 6 more on the abdomen. So first of all, there's a suggestion that anything to do with opening some gate has to do with my breathing. Okay, so that's already, which makes perfect sense. It's like if you, we talk about chi, but if you were Indian, you would talk about prana. And the concepts are similar, that chi needs the breath. Without breath, and chi can actually mean breath. For example, if you go and, say, look at the word chi in a Chinese newspaper, they don't mean energy. They mean gas. They mean air. The chi is bad means the air is stinky. Okay, so chi means air. So it means that all the primary to any process in the body is the movement of the breath, and then the movement of digestion. Okay, so we have 6 more gates in the abdomen. The first 3 clearly relate to digestion. Okay, Liang Men, stomach 21, the horizontal beam, suggesting the pancreas. Stomach 22, the gate of the gates, Guan Men. Stomach 24, the slippery flesh gate. And then we have three gates that are really on the back. Du 4, the gate of the destiny. Oh, sorry, Ren 5 is on the abdomen too, the stone gate. And UB 51, which is Huangmen. Then you have some on the legs. UB 63 is the gate to the metal. Spleen 11 is the gate of separation. Spleen 12 is the gate for the chong, and UB 37 is the gate of abundance, of fleshiness. And then you have on the arm, heart 7 is hard to know if it counts. I know it's the famous one, the Shen Men, but actually it's not called that in the Ling Shu. That's a more modern name. Sanja 2 is the gate of the fluids, and pericardium 4, which is a point I actually use a lot, is the gate of cracks, things that are open. So it's a gate of a gate. Okay, crack as in like she points. The character she means something that cracks open. Okay, and we'll talk about pericardium 4 also. And then we have two gates in the head: the gate to talking and the gate to hearing. Okay, so but the connection of gates to breath, just worth kind of looking when they're naming points, how important the notion of breathing is. Okay, that there's an agenda here. Now I'm going to make the point that even the door, the single door, the half gate, okay, and there's 3 of those. So 2 of them are on the lungs, stomach 13 at the very top of the lungs, and bladder 42 kind of just behind it. So they're at the top of the lungs. And then you have do 17 now, the door to the brain. Okay, but do 17, it's just above the pons. So it's related to the primitive brain, which means it's related neurologically to breathing. So I'm making the point that even the single door, the humble single door, is still related to breathing also. Okay? You don't have to agree with the statements. I'm just suggesting that these are ideas. Okay? So if we're breathing, we're welcoming something, and we actually have a point that's called large intestine 20, to greet the fragrance, yin xiang. Okay, so we have 3 greeters. Okay, so if those of you who were here yesterday, you know this idea, life is about interaction. We're not sitting here like doing nothing. That's not being alive. We're actually moving out to the world and taking in the world and allowing the world to influence us. We're greeting the world. So we have the point, the famous one of those, interestingly enough, is stomach 9, to greet the person, Zhen Ying. But it's actually the result of the other 2. Okay. So I welcome the breathing, I welcome the fragrance, large intestine 20, and I welcome the food, the great welcome. It's also the great welcome of these, stomach 5, should be the big point. Why? Stomach 5 is where the stomach channel, the first stomach channel, goes from the eye to the nose, through the mouth, to the ear, to stomach 8, to the brain at do 24. From stomach 5, the great welcome, the channel that we're mostly using, goes down. The second channel starts at stomach 5. Okay? It's a much bigger point as a concept than we generally give it clinical application, because unless you're very interested in TMJ, which you should be, but then you're not necessarily needling stomach 5, but you'll be using it to assess how much tension is there in this person. Okay, so what we're seeing here is that we're greeting the air, we're greeting the food that we're taking, we're welcoming, we're taking those things in order to become who I am, and who I am happens to be on top of the thyroid and on top of the sorry, I lost a word here. I'm sorry. Vagus nerve. So it controls my metabolism through the thyroid and my nervous system through the vagus nerve. Okay, so that's what I'm defining a process of what it means to be a person here. Okay. Now there's one more point that has the character person, Jen, and that's do 26, although it does have another name also, but the standard name for it is Renjong, the person center. Okay, and notice where do 26 is, between the nose and the mouth. In other words, those are the essential components of being a person. Without breathing, for sure, there's no person. Without eating, very few people. I know there are some people who are considered breatharians. They don't eat anything, they don't drink anything. That's very nice, but not common. So since we're talking about welcoming, let's talk about receiving also. So here are the points that have the character Cheng, to receive. So above we have things like to receive the light, bladder 6, which can be a good point for eyes. Okay, we have receiving the soul, gallbladder 18, which is sort of on the level of 220. It's a little bit behind. And then we have to receive the tears at stomach 1, and to receive the sauce. Okay, so again, receiving, in life, we talked a little bit about that yesterday. So I'm receiving light, I'm receiving the salts, I'm receiving the things that make me human, but also in the process of being human, there will be tears, there'll be unpleasant experiences, and I will be eating. Okay, so there'll be things that drip out of me, so to speak. Okay, and then we have 3 Chengs on the bladder channel. Okay, of which, and they have to do with I'm receiving the weight of the body. These 3 points, they support the weight of the body. Okay. And then we have stomach 20, which is to receive the fullness, or to receive the satiation when I'm eating and I'm satiating. So it's clearly anatomically named, as are the lower bladder points are clearly anatomically named. But it suggests to you these are the things that we need to receive in order to continue our existence. That these are an essential part of our existence. Okay. Of these, I can tell you that I use UB36. The bladder points are the ones that I use constantly. Whether they're truly bladder 56, or did I go more towards the gallbladder channel? Is it really 57 or 58, etc.? No big deal. Okay, but that, and 36 is a very, very important point, although sometimes you want something between 37 and 36 because you don't feel like going right under someone's buttocks. That's acceptable. Okay. So we looked at one kind of gate, and here is a gate. You see it's the same character, but in between the swinging doors, there's a whole bunch of like stuff there. This is like a checkpoint. It's like a passport control. You can pass through this gate if you show us the correct passport, sort of thing. Okay, so it really literally means a checkpoint. Okay, so they tend to come in pairs. Okay, so the famous one is stomach 7 and gallbladder 3, the upper gate and the lower gate. Now I know that when I say they're famous ones, and you're going, famous for what? Famous because there's a list in which they exist in the Suen. Okay, so that's why they're
Can you repeat your last, please, about stomach 7 and gallbladder 3?
Yeah, they're not famous in terms of nowadays nobody cares about them, but they appear in the Neijing as part of a list of important points. Okay, so therefore, it's because most points, are not all points are mentioned either in the Lingshu or the Suen. Okay, these do exist, and they exist as a pair. Okay, so they become famous. Compare that to the pair of passport checkpoints on the knee, liver 7 and gallbladder 33. No one's ever heard of them. Nobody cares about them. They're not even considered knee points. I mean, they're kind of like, okay, I know there's a point called liver 7, and I know there's a point, that we say is gallbladder 33, and if you really pushed me, I will find them. But, it's something I learned for an exam. Nobody cares. Okay. And then we have a checkpoint passage ritual for the back, which is do 3. And we have something similar for the diaphragm, a checkpoint for the diaphragm, and one, and one for the thigh. Okay, big one. That's the checkpoint for the thigh. Okay. Then we have ones, checkpoints, that have to do with some sort of functionality. So the most, well, actually, Two of them are very famous. One of them, but as a pair, really the famous ones are pericardium 6, Neiguan, the gate to the inside. This is the passport check to go inside. And Waiguan, Sanjiao 5, okay, the checkpoint for taking things out to the outside. So outside checkpoint, inside checkpoint. Now there's another pair, but only one of them is famous, and that's Ren 4, Guan Yuan. Okay, the gate to the primary. Now this Yuan, this is not the same as Yuan source. This Yuan means primary, what comes first. So you see, basically the character here is two legs and the head above it. My suggestion on that is that it means the gate to the head being what is primary, what directs everything else. So you can think of Ren 4, which by the way is the mu of the small intestine, as representing the brain-gut connection, how the gut controls or influences the brain. But Guan Yuan has a shu point. Bladder 26 is called Guan Yuan shu. Okay, so it actually does come as a pair. There's another pair because they're basically right next to each other, and that's stomach 22, Guan Men. Okay, so the checkpoint of the gates, which is basically, it's sitting on the right side, it's sitting right on top of the Oddi sphincter. Okay, so it's all the gates that are coming from the pancreas and from the gallbladder and the liver, and it checkpoints it all before it allows things to move down into the small intestine. That's what that name seems to suggest. And very similar, a little bit further in, you have Shiguan, the stone gate, okay, which suggests what happens when this when that passport checkpoint doesn't work well, you're going to start getting stones. Okay? And then we have one that does not fit in all of this, which is Guanchang, the gate for, the checkpoint of the Chong at Sanjiao 1. Okay, so, and we'll look at Jing-well points a little bit more clearly later. Okay, so I'm just taking you through a little bit, just showing you some points that normally you would have never thought of looking at their names and stuff. So no big deal. Okay. Now we have fountains. Okay, Chuan. So Chuan is white water, meaning water that's fresh and bursting, and white is the character for sun, for sun, and above the sun there's that little dot, extra dot, that means the sun is rising. So white always suggests, or can suggest, if you want, things that are pushing up. So, the famous Chuan, the young Chuan, the bubbling up spring, kidney 1, you have that. Okay, so that demonstrates the bubbling action of the springs. Paired with that, you have heart 1, Ji-chuan, the higher spring. Now, you do need to make an association between these 2 points, the bubbling spring and the higher spring, not because they share a name and they share, I bubble to reach the top, and also they're both Shao Yin, they're the first point on the Shao Yin channel on the same channel. Okay. And pericardium 2 is not exactly in the armpit. It's really on the arm, but it's sort of level with the armpit. So it suggests that there's some thinking that the armpit itself is some sort of fountain, some sort of springing for, allows us to spring forward. We then have the Lianchuan, at Ren 23, and the water fountain at kidney 5. So again, this one is at the bottom, the kidney 5 at the very bottom. The water's bubbling up. Okay, and we have 3 chuans around the knee, and in a little bit I'll talk more about that. So we have spleen 9 and gallbladder 34, the Ling chuans, Yin Ling chuan, Yang Ling chuan, and then we had the bending spring, the Chu chuan. Okay, so those are the chuans, and now let's look at what everybody really wants to talk about. Okay, because we were all kind of like pushed into this idea, we should look at the Shen and we should look at the Feng as point names, and that's gonna, if I understand the Shen points, I will understand acupuncture completely. There's a lot of trust in that. So I'm going to blow it up a little bit and suggest maybe not. I don't know. So 4 of the Shen points. Okay, so you can see there's 7, depending on how you count it. It's 7 or 8 because, in my opinion, Heart 7 was not originally named Shen Men. It was named the sharp bone. So when you look at the description of the heart channel in Ling Shu, of the 5 Shu points in Ling Shu chapter 2, the discussion is the name of that point is Yo Gui, Wei Gu. So it's not name Shenmen. That's a later um, method of calling the name. So you can say it is there, or you can say it's not. So let's say 8 points with the character Shen. 4 of them are right around the heart, which makes perfect sense. Okay, and I'm going to suggest that kidney 23 and 25, and in between you have one that has the character for ling, for soul. I'm going to suggest that these are definitely were never meant to be needled necessarily, because, if you have a Shen, people say they're very good points for a person who's dying when the Shen is leaving. When your Shen is leaving, do you really want a needle like, around your chest? You may want touch around the chest. Yes, that's different. So I'm going to suggest that these points, the front ones, are not exactly the greatest points for needling. On the other hand, certainly the back points, certainly, T5, do 11, whether you're taking it as a Watto or a Zu point, is a perfectly good for, for Shen issues. I'm going to suggest that the name is really, it's a continuation of the point before it. Well, 2 points before it. Zhe Yang. This is suggesting the pathway of the Shen moving up. I'm reaching the yang at T7 and I'm moving upwards at T5, and I'm reaching the pillar of the body, Zhenju, at T3. So it's more about the movement up of the spine, which is my theme of this whole class. So of course it's unfair that I'm saying that. But certainly the back points around the heart are certainly needleable, applicable to acupuncture, no problem at all. The front ones, I'm not so sure personally. And then you have what I call the Shen line, which is the front hairline, if you still have one. Gallbladder 13 is Ben Shen, the root of the Shen, and Du 24, the Shen Ting, the courtyard of the Shen. Courtyard meaning before you enter the Holy of Holies, it's like the reception room. Okay, that's a Ting. Okay, that's a courtyard. Okay? And then, interestingly enough, we have one at the navel, Shen Chui. Now, obviously, nobody thought that we should be needling the navel. Okay, so again, I'm promoting the idea that not all the Shen points have anything to do with acupuncture. Okay, but they have to do with energetics. Okay, the energetics in the front hairline this is where we interpret and digest information. This is where our not on the skull, but under the skin. This is the frontal brain where we interpret the information and where our emotional centers are. Okay? So it has to do with Shen. It makes perfect sense that it has to do with Shen. And we'll look at the skull with regards to Shen later on. The navel is where some of the Shen is entering because of the connection of the umbilical cord. And the only other point that has this character, Chui, which means a watchtower. Okay, so you see there's a gate and, oh, whoops, I misspelled that, the Chui there, I'm sorry. But the other Chui that we have, the other watchtower that we have is Ren 14, Ju Chui. Okay, and the big tower. Okay, so the 2 towers, the tower at Ren 8 and the tower at Ren 14, the Mu of the heart. And one of them clearly talks about the Shen. The Ren 14 implies the Shen. Okay, so we're watching over the Shen between what we got in our navel and our own heart, the Mu point of our own heart. Okay, so those are the Shen points which we are all tend to be very enamored with. Okay. Now another one what we love. Now when you see a question mark on a slide. Just pay attention to that because it will appear on your test. Okay, so I'm trying to be nice about it in case we don't have a lot of time. So the other big point name that people love to look at is the character feng for wind. Okay, so wind is the insect that goes everywhere. Okay, so it penetrates everywhere. Okay? Now, generally speaking, in the TCM world, we think of the wind points as points to pull out external wind invasion. Even gallbladder 31, which generally is used for skin by TCM people, or at least that's what I was taught. Maybe it was not correct, I don't know. But we're thinking about it as taking wind out of the body. I'm going to make the proposition that it is actually, here we're looking at stabilizing. I don't want to use the word internal wind because for TCM people, the words internal wind means something very specific, like tremors or something like that. But think about it more as a meditator. The wind can be something that disturbs your calmness, your solidity. Okay, it doesn't have to be wind. It's just thoughts arise and whatever, it's like, I have a little scratch here, but if you're meditating, you're trying to meditate rather than be distracted. So there's 3 feng points by the neck: Du 16, gallbladder 20, and Sanjiao 17. There's 2 on the shoulder blade, and I'm going to make a big deal out of those shoulder blades thing in a second. And there's 1 in the leg. And I'm going to, so as you're seeing here, the neck, I'm trying to protect the brain from too much movement, meaning mental movement. Okay. The shoulder blades, it's about stabilizing the scapula so that the spine can be free, and they're going to be related to the shoe points, to the transportation, to the movement of the nervous system along the spine. And then the solidity that you get from the legs at gallbladder 31. So, and as any meditator knows, I'm going to take the slide away for a second so you can see me. So what you want to do is actually view the speaker. It's not going to work on the recording, unfortunately, but let me unpin you. Oops. Okay, I can't do it. Okay. If you are, for the rest of you, you can, let me just, hold on. Let me see if I can pin myself. I cannot do that. Okay, sorry. Okay, it's still not going to work because I'm seeing, okay. Any meditator knows that when you have a lot of disturbance.
You're seeing who?
No, I'm
Oh,
seeing Lilian now, but I think you're seeing me. I think.
yeah, I am seeing you. Yeah.
Okay, it's good. No worries. I think it's good. My mistake. So any meditator knows that if you're meditating and you do, if you're watching somebody, people meditating like this, you're going, they're falling asleep, right? Okay, so generally speaking, if you're meditating and you're finding yourself kind of like getting caught in daydreams, what you do is you tuck your chin slightly and elongate the back of the neck. That's a very common strategy, okay, for countering quote unquote wind, for thoughts. Talk to any meditator, they'll say, oh yeah, for that's a standard thing that everybody uses. So the wind points in the back of the neck are meant, I'm suggesting that the name there is about protecting the brain, allowing the brain for concentration, for solidity. Okay. The shoulder blades, whoops, sorry, let me get that slide. Okay, with the shoulder blades, what's happening? So if all of you, let me give you the picture of myself again, sorry. So if you all go like this, tighten the shoulder blades, okay? And see what happens in the back. The whole back gets rigid, the whole spine gets rigid. If I just lift my shoulder blades, okay? If I relax my shoulder blades, now what I want you to do is relax the shoulder blade and take the shoulder blades, that's the scapula only, send it down, but slightly forward. It's as if you're taking small intestine 11 and pushing it towards stomach 18, slightly. Okay, so the shoulder blade goes down and slightly into the back. Do not squeeze the shoulder blades together. Okay, so just be aware that you don't want to do that. So what happens when the shoulder blades come down and slightly in towards the front? The whole spine loosens and elongates. Okay, that's a big deal. Okay, why? Because if I'm allowing the scapula to be free, okay, that anchoring allows for the anchoring and the release of the spine. And the spine is represented to a large extent by these shoe points, the transportation, okay, which we might maybe in modern terms call the ability of the nervous system to flow. And there are 3 shoe points that are nothing to do with the bladder shoe points on the shoulder. Okay, small intestine 10, small intestine 14, and 15. Okay, so the now shu and 2 jianshu, the outer one and the inner one. Okay, I'm going to make the point that the shoulder allows for movement. If the shoulder is tight, the movement is obstructed. If the shoulder is released, movement along the spine can happen. And I'm going to suggest that that's what they're suggesting by the way they name Bing Feng, okay, and even bladder 12. Bladder 12, Feng Man, is also is sitting on top of all the shoe points, by the way. It's like the first shoe points, if you like. Okay, so there's a strong connection between the concept of shoe points to transport so things can freely move, okay, and the shoulder. The character now, I'm not sure if that's the next slide or not. Let me check. Okay, so, sorry, it will come in a second, I believe. No, it doesn't. So, so I'm showing you the wind points and the shoe points around the shoulder blades. Shoe points that are not related to the bladder, except Gao Wang Shu in this case. Okay, these now shu now actually also means soft. It means shoulder, but it also means soft. Jian, the character for shoulder, for the physical structure of the shoulder, has a door in it. In other words, it has to be able to move. Of course, a shoulder has to be able to move. Otherwise, it doesn't act as a shoulder. And then finally, we have gallbladder 31. Okay, so there's this wind in the leg, and we have to ask, what kind of wind is this? Because it doesn't make as much sense. So now we have to look at the other point that's basically kind of in the same level as gallbladder 31 and shares a name too, but a different part of the name, which is the shi, the market. Okay, stomach 33, the yin market. Okay, okay, and here we're seeing that it's about grabbing, to reach out and grab. That's why it's a city. You reached out to the hinterlands and grabbed that land. Okay, that's what this city, this market means. Okay, so it's to grab. I'm going to suggest that it's about having an action of consolidating the thigh. So as you're sitting, just sit and flop into your legs and just let the legs just flop. Just let them be as fat and wide as you possibly can. And now think of yourself as squeezing the leg, the thigh, making them as thin, you want to be a skinny little model, to the extent that your body is going to allow you. And what happens? You're doing it in the thigh, but your whole torso responds and elongates. The stability of the leg, and we're going to see that later again, okay, is going to allow for the movement upwards, the elongation of the torso, the opening of the torso. Okay, remember, that's my theme, the elongation of the torso so that things can move along the spine. This is how I'm seeing the point names. Okay, and around the same level, you're also having in the back, you have a point that's called yin men, which is the flourishing gait. And we have liver 9, if you like, or we have one on the kidney channel that's either called in Chinese Xin Yin Men, or you can call it inner yin. Okay, so we have a place on the thigh where we can squeeze the thigh, consolidate it, grab it, and stabilize the movement of the rest of the body, allowing the rest of the body to be solid. Because if you just let everything flop, there's no solidity. Yeah, you flop down to the ground, but you're not solid, really. You're just flopping. There's a difference between solid and flopping. Okay, it's sometimes hard for some of us to know the difference, granted. Okay. So that's going through like some popular names like the Shen and the Feng and looking at it. What I'd like to do now is go through the different areas of the body, okay, and look at the point names of those different areas of the body. We'll take a break in about, say, 10 or 15 minutes and take questions then. I just want to make sure that we can really get through all the material. Okay. So what we're looking right now here is the shoe points of the foot. So that's the spleen 3 all the way out to bladder 65. This is basically the transverse arch of the foot. Okay. Now, not looking at any point name at all. Okay, and if you say to someone who knows anything about the body, about the mechanics of the body, you say the transverse arch of the foot. Okay, I mean this, not when I use the hand for the foot, it means just translated to a foot. Okay, it's obvious that what we're talking about is the ability to stand up, stabilizing the posture. Okay, pushing up. The pushing up is done on the yin side with spleen 3 and liver 3 area more. But if you're pushing up, you also have to gather it up. Because if you just push up, you might fall onto the outside of the foot. Well, not fall, but roll. Okay. So what you need to do is you're pushing with spleen 3, Tai Bai, the great white. I actually like to translate it as if it means the great rising. Why? Because white, you may recall, is the sun with that dot above it. It's the color that you get, white or pure or pale, when the sun is rising. Okay, so spleen 3, called great white, implies great rising, to rise, to push down into the foot, to rise up. Chong, Tai is, again, the great, and the great surging up. Okay? And then you have in the middle, you have the sinking valley, stomach 43. Now we'll leave gallbladder 41 first, out of it for a second because it's a teeny bit complicated. And then on bladder 65, you have to gather or to bundle the bone. Okay, so you rise up and you still need to bundle it together, because if you just rise up, it will, as you push up, what goes up will flop outside. Okay, that's what fountains do, right? They squeeze upwards and then they spread all over the place. You don't want it spreading yet until you've reached the brain, so then it can water out your orifices. Okay? But so you have the bundling bone at UB65. Okay? Now gallbladder 41 is actually of this similar understanding, but it's hidden. This understanding is hidden because what it actually means, Zu is leg, Lin Chi means to face or overlook the tears, the crying. Okay, and it's the same name as gallbladder 15, by the way, and that's why it has the leg. So we have a toe Lin Chi and a Zu Lin Chi, gallbladder 15 and gallbladder 41. If you're
What
looking
was
at
the first point, Avi?
gallbladder 15, 1-5.
Okay.
So they have the same name, and you just put head in front of gallbladder 15 and leg in front of gallbladder 41. Lin, to face, to overlook, has in it the left side plus the very top of the right side is to prostrate, so it's a horizontal action. Okay, plus it has a phonetic. Okay. The character for crying, qi, is the water, and the part on the right is to stand. So in the character of gallbladder 41, you have both horizontal, like lying down, and standing up. Now think about, so first of all, it fits in this theme of the shoe points, which are about allowing us to be vertical, pushing us up, but gathering to be vertical, number one. Number two, what is the classification of gallbladder 41? It's the opening of the die. Can you see how this reclining thing, this play between vertical and horizontal, might have had something to do with making it the opening point for the die? The die is the only horizontal channel we have. Okay? So it's just interesting to notice. I'm not saying it's the truth. I don't know who decided on gallbladder 41 being the opening point for the die. I'm just saying, really interesting, isn't it? Okay. So those are the foot shoe points. If you're taking, so the shoe points are on this side of the foot. If you're taking the side that you're stepping on, kind of like the kidney one side, exactly on the other side of the shoe points, we have what are called the Jue points, the Maruyama Jue points, which are used extensively by some people. Primarily as moxa, you can needle them because if, nowadays we have these fabulous needles, from Sarin, the 0.00 whatever, the green ones, the dark green ones, nobody complains. It's no big deal. But originally they were moxa points, and they're very good points for problems along the channel as well as chest problems or head problems. Okay. The character Jue, we saw that yesterday in the gallbladder law idea to invert. It's like you're walking along a cliff and you're like, so it's like you're falling over. Okay, so nowadays often Jue means stroke. Okay, so fainting or stroke. At the knees, what you have 3 points with a character Chuan. So we're going to look at that. Okay, the fountain. See, you have a yin ling chuan, a yang ling chuan, spleen 9 and gallbladder 34. And then you have the bending spring, liver 8. In the back, you have things that yield. Okay, bladder 40 and kidney 10, the yin gu, the yin valley and the yielding center, which kind of makes sense because it's at the center of the knee, which bends, the popliteal fossa. And then you have Zhu San Li, which kind of doesn't fit here. You can't make everything fit. And if you're taking the actual point on the actual stomach point that's on the knee itself, do be the calf's nose, it also doesn't fit. So it kind of doesn't matter. So if we're looking at, now notice the question mark, let's look at the character Chuan. Okay, that's to spring. What it suggests is, because there's 3 points with a fountain generating upwards, it suggests that they're seeing the knee in a certain way. They're seeing that there's an ability to generate an upward movement, just like a fountain at the knee. So we saw that we start the movement of pushing the weight up at the transverse process, at the shoe points of the foot. That energy reaches the knee and is going to start losing, the upward movement is going to start losing some energy. Okay? And gravity, and as you grow older, more and more gravity is going to push things down. So there's going to be more resistance. You need extra push up. Now, hopefully, can you see my spleen 9? Yes?
You're still sharing screen. We can see you.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Okay. So, you can see my spleen 9. So, do you see how there's like some flabbiness here? Yeah? When I was younger, 20 years ago, it was skin on bone. That's typical for men up to say age 40. Women, often they have chubby already. It's very common. You move up the bone and you you're hitting the bone, but then there's a lot of like extra flesh there because gravity is pushing things down. Okay, so the character yin ling chuan, the ling is a mound. Things are mounding up, accumulating at these points below the knee, but I have the ability to push them up still. Okay, so that's what that character, the name of the point, I believe, is suggesting. So that the knee is this capacity of regenerating, of pushing things up. Okay. Now, just for interest, so for you, of course, you understand, in French, les genoux, you can say genou and générer, to generate, are similar. So you can see the same concept in French. Farsi, it's also like French, it's an Indo-European language. Okay. So, and so by the way, in English, knee, it's going to be the same thing. Notice the n, okay, like ne, like to be born. Okay, so all these Indo-European languages, in Farsi also, the character for knee has birth in it or new in it. Okay, in Hebrew is not a Indo-European language. It's a Semitic language. It's an unrelated language. Okay, it still has the same concept because berech is a knee and brecha or bracha. Brecha is a pool and bracha is a blessing. A blessing is the source. You're spreading from the source the blessings. Okay, they all come from the same root and they all imply the same concept that the Chinese used when they named the knee points as fountains, as a source that can generate things. Okay, or in English, if you take it knee, take out the K in knee, and you get was born. Okay, to generate. Okay, so even though we're not hearing it in English, it's actually there because it's an Indo-European language. Okay, whoops, sorry. Okay, in the hips, we have a different concept. Okay, here we're establishing some support and residence. So let me actually let's do two exercises first. So if everybody can stand up, and let's see, hopefully you can see me. Let's see. It's always hard with Zoom, isn't it? Okay, I think that will work. Okay, so what I want you to do is stand up and push your hips forward. Okay, tuck your tail under, and then stick your tail back. So you're basically creating a kyphotic curve in the lower back and a lordotic curve in the lower back. Okay, and stand with your hips apart so you can actually feel. So push your hips forward if you need to tighten your buttocks, if it helps you. And what does this feel like? And push your butt out. And what does it feel like? And then let your tailbone just hang straight down. And notice what that feels like. Chances are, when you push your hips forward, you feel a little bit stuck. Okay? When you push your sit bones back, your butt out, you feel you're trying to go somewhere, kind of thing. Okay, overly going somewhere. Okay, and when you let the tailbone just drop down, there's a certain kind of, oh, okay, I'm settled. Everything is good. That's why, when you do like Tai Chi exercises, say bend the knee, let the tailbone go down. Okay, so you're settled and your knees are bent, so you're not going anywhere. Okay, so what it suggests to you is that the inner thigh, when you push forward, okay, the inner thigh gets pushed forward. What happens is the nervous system gets, there's a tightness, and so you're manipulating the nervous system by pushing the tailbone back and forth. The tailbone has some control on the nervous system. You can manipulate the nervous system. So we'll see that spleen 12, for example, is called, has the character chong and chong men, and the liver 12 is Jimai, the hasty pulse. This area allows you to feel hasty or surging. It has something to do with the nervous system. Now, let go of that exercise And what I want you to do, this is different. This is not about tilting the pelvis. Okay, tilting the pelvis, we were to feel the inner thigh. We're trying to feel gallbladder, the role of gallbladder 29. Okay, so what I want you to do is allow all your weight to just sink into the hips. Okay, so it's like heavy in the hip. What happens? You will feel in all likelihood that your chest is sinking. Okay, I'm exaggerating now, but I'm really, if I just do it in the between the torso and the thigh, I'm allowing the weight of the torso just fall, my chest is going to sink. Now, push away and separate the leg from the torso. Make space between the leg and the torso. And what happens? The chest opens. Okay? So gallbladder 29, that's called Jiu-well, okay, the residence bone hole, controls or has an ability to control the opening of the chest, therefore also the opening of the nervous system. Does that make sense? Okay. So we'll go back to the slide. Any questions on that? Because I know when I do exercises, I want to make sure that, I know there can be zillions of questions, but okay. So the point of these exercises is to show you that these point names, the surging gait, and the urgent pulse have something to do with our nervous system, which means that if they're tight, the nervous system is going to be tight. Okay? So in order to establish one's residence and give it support, that's what the purpose of the hip joint is, or that's what the hip joint does. I don't know if it's at its purpose. And the other points that we're seeing already on bladder 36, we're seeing the counter for support, to receive the support. And gallbladder 29 is called the residence, liao. Okay? And then you have gallbladder 30 also. And there's, this issue of what is the Juan. I'm going to suggest that Juan means the perineal floor. Okay, so it's the pulsing from the legs, the ability of the leg to support the perineal floor has something to do with gallbladder 30. And then we also, in this level, or this joint, we have the big one, the gate to the thigh. All right, so before we move on, let's see if there are any questions, and then take a short break. So if you have a question and it's in English, and even if it's not in English, if you can put your video on. Yes, Yves.
Oui, moi je voudrais savoir, c'est Yves Duceppe. Je voudrais savoir
He wants to know, there are other Feng points, but the Feng is at the end, like stomach 40.
That's not,
No.
Okay, I'll tell you a very funny story. That's not Feng, that's not wind. That is a very different character. And, so maybe you're the person, I don't know. Okay. But Elisabeth Rochat, is a very famous sinologist, once told me a story. And she said, I had someone, but I think it was a woman, so I don't think it was you, but it's, anyway, she said, so this person wrote a whole thesis on points from the pinion. And and she says, so they give me this thing, and she says, but the points don't mean what they think they mean, because they're looking at the pinion, they don't understand. And yes, it says Feng, but it's, first of all, I'm not a Chinese speaker, so I can't tell you exactly how that Feng is pronounced. But that Feng does not mean wind. It just happens to be the same pinion. I guarantee you that when it comes to the wind, to the Feng of the wind, the points I gave you, the Du 16, Sanjiao 17, gallbladder 20, small intestine 12, UB 12, and gallbladder 31, they're the only ones that I check. I went through the whole list to make sure that there's no.
Est-ce que le point rein 23, saut divin, est-ce que ça voudrait dire souffle?
Kidney 23, what does that point mean? It has something to do with the Shen? Sealing the Shen?
Yes, wait. I did not say that kidney 23, you started talking about wind. Kidney 23 has the character Shen. What I did not say it doesn't have character Shen. I said, yes, it has Shen. But what I said was, I don't think I'm not saying it has nothing to do with the Shen. I'm saying it's not a good point for needling for me, because if, the Worsley people, for example, they say these are great points when the Shen is leaving, when the person is dying. And I'm saying when the person is dying, to needle them here is not very nice for my taste. So I'm not saying it doesn't have Shen. I'm saying this point was not meant for so much, the name wasn't meant for acupuncture. It was brought in from another tradition. So yes, for touching, and I will show you, I will go through the kidney channels here and I will show you what the meaning means, but not necessarily useful for me for needling. I'm actually just trying to look at stomach 42, because I'm not like Elizabeth Rochon. I'm not that kind of scholar. But so I will tell you what the stomach 41 means. It's something to do with okay. That feng long actually, okay, means abundance. It's a dish that's full with lushness from the mountain. Has nothing to do with wind. Feng long, stomach 40, is not a wind point. And yes, kidney 23 and kidney 25 are Shen points. The point I'm making is that they're not necessarily for needle. Now, if you want to needle them and you're capable and it works, I'm not saying no. I'm talking about me. I'm saying I believe that comes from something that's not related to acupuncture, and I will show you where I believe it comes from later. It comes from a meditation method of doing things. Is that okay?
Okay.
Sorry. Anyone else?
Non, mais merci. Merci.
He says thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, yes, Christiane. Christiane has her hand up.
Oui, j'ai une question. Moi, j'ai manqué le bout sur le nerf vague.
She missed one part on the vagus nerve. What was it? The point stomach 9 or stomach 11?
Stomach 9. Yeah.
We see.
Stomach 9 is related to the thyroid as well as the autonomic nervous system, because first of all, the thyroid has a relationship with the nervous system, and number 2, it's very close to the vagus nerve. So it affects the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve sends parasympathetic feedback to the organs. Yes?
Merci.
Welcome. And Sylvie?
By Sylvie.
Sylvie, est-ce que tu as une question? Perhaps not. She has problems.
Yes, I've got a question.
Yes, she's ready.
Can we see you if possible? Thank you.
Okay, hello.
Hello.
No, she's there. You talked about the shoe points on the Dai Mai, Tai Mai, Tai Chong, Jiangu. Shoe points on the foot, with the character shoe. Shoe points on the foot. And you said that.
But I didn't catch that. Dew point. You talk about.
Okay.
What's that? That part I didn't catch it.
Okay. So you have the shoe points are here.
Yes.
The web points are here.
Yes.
So they're just, and there's
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else? Okay, so no other questions. So let's take a break. It is. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I am sorry. I missed
You missed the
Point.
question.
Yep. No. Okay, carry on with the break.
Okay, so let's take a break. Let's come back at 5 to 10. Okay, that's a 10-minute break. You'll get one more break at least, so don't worry. Okay, so it's enough time to boil water, you know, have tea, whatever we need. Okay? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we shall continue. There we go. Okay, so looking at the wrists. Okay, so the wrist, it's all about, we talked about actually yesterday also, you know, the arms, but here I'm going to talk about the wrist specifically. It's about reaching out. This is why you have 3 yang in the character. Small intestine 5, Sanjiao 4, and large intestine 5. They all have the character yang in it, to reach out, to go out. Okay, and you know, you also have the character big, either Tai or Da. The difference is 1 little dot in the character between lung 9 and pericardium 7. Heart 7, as I've talked to you, I've said, you know, it's not so clear to me. That's, you know, that's a name that's imposed later, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with later. It's not like later is way before I was born anyway. Okay. But, you know, it's always hard to know what to do with names on the heart channel because you're never sure, you know, like if it comes from a slightly different system, because the original system conceivably did not have a heart channel. You know, you know, I can't say that that's, you know, 100% true, but that's our understanding. Let me just check that we are being, okay, we're good. So it's about going out and then pulling it in, you know, and that's why you're getting something that's more like an abyss or a mound with a pericardium and lung. While it's big, you know, because you're bringing something in, so something gets accumulated as well. But the philosophical statement in the wrist is about reaching out and pulling things in. That's the purpose of the wrist. Okay. And sorry, I had a problem getting the slide in. Okay. With the elbows, I'm going to make the suggestion that it's about flexibility. I'm going to build up the case. It's going to take a little while. And remember, these are just, this is the case that I am making. You can make a totally different case. You don't have to, you know, I don't have to be correct in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so what you have here is you have 2 points that have the character bent, just like at liver 8 we have bent. We have large intestine 11, and that's going to be the large intestine 11 is going to be the way I'm going to make the argument here. Okay, but we have 2 bending points. Something that bends, well, the elbow bends. That's pretty clear. That's pretty obvious. Okay, now we have 2 oceans as well. You know, that's small intestine 8 and pericardium 3, and they're both small oceans. Okay, Xiao and Xiao. Okay, small ocean and lesser ocean. Okay, and then we have 2 marshes, and this character for marsh, Z, is going to be an interesting character. So what we're seeing here, okay, so I put up the 3 characters. Now, in the knees, you have chuan, a fountain that pushes up, okay, like quickening, getting more action going, okay? What we have in the elbows, interestingly, is like things that slow the motion in. It's murkier, it's slower. A marsh, you know, it's kind of blah. And an ocean is very fast. An ocean, of course, can have huge storms, so there can be a lot of movement in an ocean. But what it suggests here, in the knees, you have the weight, so you can spring off the weight, okay? In the elbows, you don't have that, okay? But bear in mind, this is going to be a little bit of a gymnastics here, mental gymnastics, but we have to do that, unfortunately. The character for a marsh, so if you say a marsh or a swamp, okay, it sounds very bleh, you know, a swamp doesn't sound like a very bright or uplifting thing, right? But in the Bagua okay, in the hexagrams. And I know yesterday I said I know nothing about hexagrams. I still know nothing about hexagrams, but you know, this is part of the character. So what can I say? Okay. The hexagram, the trigram actually, that is a marsh is also a dway, an exchange. So every time I see the character z for a swamp, it can also mean exchange, even though it doesn't say it, because as a trigram, they're equivalent. And that trigram, what is the meaning of that trigram? The meaning is joy or brilliant. So it actually, the character z for swamp can actually mean the exact opposite of the connotation that I have about a swamp. It can actually mean going out and reaching out and being joyous. Okay, so just bearing that in mind. So even though we're saying the character, we have something that's slowed down, it actually may be slowed down, but it actually also might mean to exchange. It might also mean the opposite of slowing down. I can't be sure what it means. Okay, I did not name the points. I don't know what the original intentions are. But when I'm talking about the flexibility, so obviously when I'm bending something, there's flexibility. Okay, if I can bend. What we're seeing in the elbows is we're seeing all these contradictions. To be able to tolerate contradictions, I have to be flexible. Okay, so we have the vast ocean, but they're small oceans, heart 3 and small intestine 8. They're oceans, but they're tiny. Okay, we have the ability to bend by the 2 bending points. Okay, and when we're looking at Sanjiao 11, Tianjing, okay, it's heaven, it's the sky, Tian, but it's a well, Jing. It's a contradiction.
Sorry, which point did you
Sanjiao
talk about?
11. Sanjiao 11. I'm sorry, it's not on the slide, but it was
Okay.
Sanjiao 10. I'm sorry, Sanjiao 10. It's on this slide. Okay. So Sanjiao 10 is called Tianjing. It's a sky, but it's also a well. These are two, not only is it the sky and the earth, it's like you're digging further down from the earth.
I am sorry. Did you say Sanjiao 11 or 10?
10, this. So you can see it now, it's on the slide. Okay. So you have all these contradictions, and then you have something, you have a character, the swamp, that on the one hand means something that's very measured, that's very slow, that doesn't flow a lot, and on the other hand could mean brilliant. So all these contradictions. So I'm solving the contradiction. So first of all, to resolve contradictions, I have to be flexible. So the elbows, by the names of the points, it's suggesting that they're saying that the elbows are about being flexible. And that's going to lead us to the shoulders in a minute. Okay. But, so I'm taking stuff out from the wrists. I now have to be flexible, and I'm going to make one more argument about the flexibility. We have 4 pools in the body, 4 chi in the body. One is the heavenly pool, pericardium 1. One is the yang pool, okay, at Sanjiao 4. One is the wind pool at gallbladder 20. These are all places that are pulled like a funnel, okay? And now we have a bend where the bending is being pulled, where it's funneled. What is it? So I have to add, so we all understand heaven pool, yang pool, these are places where the wind pulls the heaven, there's influences from heaven pool, the yang is pulling into. What is being pulled at large intestine 11? What is being funneled there? I'm going to suggest that it's the ability to bend, or the ability to manipulate, or the ability to move. Okay, so I'm making the case that the elbows are about flexibility. Okay, and that flexibility allows us freedom, and we've already seen that some freedom through the shoulder blade. Now let's look at the points that are on the shoulder. So I'm taking one on each channel because that's kind of like the theme, that I'm like, as we're going from, Ying Spring, Jing-well, Ying Spring, Shu Stream, et cetera, hair ocean, whatever. So we don't have classification for the shoulder, but in the same vein. So we're seeing, of course, the character shoulder a few times, and then we're seeing the highest spring at heart 1, and then we're seeing the fountain at pericardium 2, and we see the cloud at lung 2. Okay, so let's start with lung. Let's let go of lung 1, lung 2. The cloud is like you're free as a cloud, sort of thing. Okay, so you've got that. You've got the freedom of the spring, the highest, um, um, the fountain that suggests freedom again. Okay, so these two fountains suggest freedom. So now what we have to do is still look at the young ones. Okay, so the shoulder, the ones that have Jian, okay, so that's large intestine 15 and Samjiao 14 have the character Jian, shoulder. Okay, is a swinging door in the body. A swinging door, if you can open it, it implies freedom. Now, which is in small intestine 10, okay, primarily means the bicep of the upper arm, but it can mean the shoulder. But what it really means is soft in the body. The character, besides the left side, the right-hand side, it's like the rain, that's falling, and slowly, the stuff from the ground is growing. Okay, so the 3 points that have the character now, which implies softness. Okay, you can have freedom with sharpness, but it's the freedom of softness is much more open. Okay, you kind of need softness to be free. If you're sharp, it's hard to be free. Okay, so yes, if you're escaping from prison, you have to be sharp. Then you gained freedom. But that's not spiritual freedom. Spiritual freedom requires softness, is kind of like the statement here. Okay? And this is actually a slide from another presentation, but it's kind of nice and it demonstrates it very well. That large intestine 15 is called Jian Yu. Okay, Jian is the shoulder. Yu, on the one hand, it can say that it's the shoulder bone, so you do see the bone on the left side. But Yu is a mountain district that's famous for its monkeys. And that same character, if you put the heart underneath it, means foolish. So it's like the monkey can swing from tree to tree because they have this incredible capacity of openness and freedom in the shoulders. The shoulder should be unobstructed. We should be able to go 180 degrees in all directions with the shoulder. Most people cannot do that with their hips, but most people, when they're young, at least, can move the shoulder in all directions without a problem. Most people are restricted with the hips at about 90 degrees. Okay? But the shoulder is totally flexible and totally free, or should be. And that's the implication here. Now, this slide comes from a slightly different point of view of suggesting that large intestine 15 has something to do with detoxification, like foolishness, and undoing foolishness, but that's a different situation. So before we continue onto the Jing-well points, because the Jing-well points have a bunch of chong points in them, I wanted to talk about the character chong a little bit. So there are two kinds of chongs.
I'm sorry, you were talking about the Jing-well points, but the points that you stated were not the same. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes. I'm talking, before we talk about the Jing, before the Jing-well points, we're talking about what does chong mean. Okay, so we're getting to the Jing-well points, but first we're doing chong, because we need the chong. Okay, so there are two characters that are pronounced chong and mean exactly the same thing, but if you look at the character, it's a teeny bit different. Okay, so most of the chong points that we have is like to rinse or to flush. Yes, it also means to charge or to push through, but it's, the character itself originally is kind of like to infuse, like when you make tea. You to put the tea bag and the tea bag chong until there's tea. The other chong is the one on the right side. Okay, that's the one what we see in the Jing-well points. That's why we're starting there. It has to move, and inside the movement, there's something that is serious, that has emphasis. So it's to move. This chong means to move with seriousness. Okay? So now don't forget from yesterday, chong 2. 2 is the same as in Ren 22, the so-called chimney. Okay? Means conflict. Okay? So this is going to, this is important. Okay? As we look at the Jing-well points of the hand, because we have a bunch of chongs in the Jing-well points of the hand. You're already seeing it here, heart 9, Sanjiao 1, and pericardium 9. Okay, so the fingertips, the Jing-well points, are going to suggest something to do with exchanging or conflicting, moving out to the world and having conflicts. So if you just shake your hands and shake them as fast as you can or as vigorously as you can, keep shaking, keep shaking, keep shaking, keep shaking. It takes a little while and a little bit longer because you started a little later than me. Okay, now stop, and you feel like this buzzing. You're feeling the chong in your fingertips, correct? Okay, so this is what these chong points, this is the idea of why. How come there's chong at the tips of the fingers? Because of these exchanges. And look at the other point names. Okay, we have shang. Shang is basically means to exchange. People will say it's a musical note, but it basically what it suggests an exchange. Okay, and then we have a marsh, small intestine 1, the one that's but remember, a marsh, the z can also mean to exchange, dway, or it can mean because of the trigram, or it can be joyous or brilliant. So all the Jing-well points of the hand suggest this, this exchange, this thing that moves. Okay? And if you now do a different exercise, that's going to remind you very much of doing a chi ball, but I'm not asking you to do a chi ball. I'm asking you to do something slightly different. I'm asking you to basically take the heart channel and the lung channel. Okay, hold on. Let me stop the share so it's a little easier to see. Okay, so take the heart and the lung and separate them, but it's as if you're moving through molasses. So don't do this. You're not trying to make a straight line. So you're opening pericardium 8, Lao Gong, and the fish border, Yu Ji. You're opening them away from each other as if you're going through molasses. So just do that with both hands. You'll probably feel it with one hand more than the other. As you're feeling something's opening in the palm, you will probably feel something opening in the chest. Yes? No? Okay. So what that does is the lung 10 is called the fish border. What is a fish? One of the characteristics of a fish is fish don't close their eyes. So, in Buddhist traditions, you have a wooden drum that that keeps the rhythm for chanting so that people don't fall asleep when they're chanting, kind of thing. It's to keep me awake. And Lao Gong, this is the practice, the palace of practice, or actually so they say the palace of toil, Lao Gong, kind of. I'm going to say the opposite. Pericardium 8, I'm going to call the opposite. It's the practice, it's the work that you do for the palace is the chest. So you see, as you're activating pericardium 8, you're activating what we will call the yin spring point area. Okay, of the hand, you're opening it up, but like through honey, it pulls. the chest also opens. It responds to that. Okay, so again, suggesting a lot of these points have to do with meditation and not necessarily have to do with acupuncture. Okay, we can still use them, and it doesn't mean that you can't needle lung 10 because, oh, maybe it has to do with Buddhist monks. No, you can still needle it. It's just that I think the name might have more to do with something different. Let me get the share back. Okay, so that's the hand. Okay, now let's look at the, sorry, always with the slide. Okay, I'm sorry. I think I skipped a slide. Yeah, the foot. Okay. In the foot, we're going to have a very similar idea, except this exchange, you know, it's like, yeah, look, you can, okay. You can shake your foot. Let me show you that for a second. So you can shake a foot. It's a lot harder to shake the foot. I'm actually doing it with my hands. And if you do this long enough, you will feel like the whole leg is loosening. You're not going to get that electrical buzzing feeling, not in the foot and not in the leg, but you will get a sort of looseness. So there is something that's similar, but the foot is somewhat different, but the same idea. So what we have here is we have spleen 1, yin bai. Again, we're seeing the sun rising, the white as sun rising for pushing out. We're seeing in liver 1 the something that's big and urging and sincere. There's an urgency, okay, to urge someone to do something. It's like you're beating up the poor lamb to make them do something, okay. And then of course you have that's not on the tips, but it is the Jing-well point is kidney 1, the bubbling spring. So what we're seeing is something that urges up, that pushes up, that rises up. At UB67, we're seeing to reach the yin. Okay, so yes, we're reaching the ground. This is an exchange. Okay, and also we're seeing, on the other hand, while we're reaching the yin, we're looking at the orifices, okay, of the head. That's where the orifices generally are. Okay, and then we have another exchange. Remember this exchange, this dway, we saw it before in a character for swamp. Okay, so we're seeing it's so much more obvious with the hands, but with the names, you're seeing it also with the feet. And if you want to demonstrate it for yourself, shake your foot out for a little bit. You know, it's like, don't do it like, you know, just for 3 seconds. You do it for like 20, 30 seconds, and then feel how that leg feels, you know, compared to the other leg. And by leg, I mean from the ankle all the way up to the hip. Okay, so moving on. So now we're going to look at the Shen again. Okay, this time at the skull. So I'm going to make the argument basically that the front is the Shen line. In front of 220, we have things that open and receive. You know, so you can, you know, compare that to the Yang Ming, receiving the sun. The occiput we talked about is guarding the entry to the brain. That's the Taiyang areas. And the Shaoyang areas above the ears, this is the area that mediates, that translates the stimulation that we receive and interprets it. Okay, so this is what stores it and creates perceptions about it, or forms it in our mind. This guards it, the back area guards it from too much input, and this is the interpretation. The Shaoyang is the interpretation. Okay. Now, this is basically, I'm just showing you the points at the top of the head. Okay, so the top, do 24, bladder 3 and 4, gallbladder 13, 15. This is all the hairline that I'm going slightly back from. It goes from the left, the do, the bladder, and the gallbladder. The gallbladder is always a teeny bit behind, is half zun behind, whereas the bladder and the do seem to be supposedly on the same.
I'm sorry, Avi. Can you just slow your pace just a little bit?
Yes.
It's I don't ask that often, but
I know.
was okay for a while, but now
I understand.
okay. Just to make sure that I translate properly to the other attendees.
No, and this slide there's just too much. There's just too much here. So what happens here is the left column is the do channel. The middle column is the bladder, and the right side is the gallbladder. Okay, that's all. From the top, from the hairline, all the way back to do 20. So is that clear? Okay, I think.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. So sorry about that. So what we're seeing here is that we're seeing things that have like windows or receiving, like the window for the eye, or receiving the soul, or receiving the light, or actual Shen, or the upper star. So we're seeing things that have to do with receiving stuff. And if you look at bladder 7, communicating with heaven, communicating with whatever you mean by heaven, the sky, or whatever, the influences of heaven. That's what you're seeing with the front part of the skull. Okay, so I'm calling it the Shen line, influencing our cognition. Okay, this is the frontal lobe. Okay. Now, if we go to the occiput, which we mostly have seen before, same idea in the way I presented the points. The do is on the left, the bladder is in the center, and the gallbladder is on the right. If the slide went further to the left, you'll have another bladder on the left and another gallbladder on the right. Okay, so now you know how to read the slide. I'm just taking half the right side of the occiput. Okay, so in the center, you have the brain door, okay, and below it, you have the wind palace. Okay, and we talked about the wind guarding the brain, the do 16 and the gallbladder 20 and the sanjiao 17. Okay, they're all wind points. They're guarding the brain from too much input. So we have a door brain, that's something I can guard with. And I also have the brain emptiness, gallbladder 19. So I'm trying to keep the brain relatively empty, okay, rather than busy. Okay, and I have a resting place for the brain, the jade pillow, bladder 9, and I have a heavenly pillar, something that will support all of it. Okay? So you see how the point names seem to correspond with this meditation trick of, oh, open up the occiput and the thoughts calm down. Very interesting, isn't it? At least I hope it's interesting. And then the ear region, the names here, interestingly enough, at least for me it's interesting, is that they suggest something that mediates responses. They almost point at something like synapses, like gallbladder 9, Tian Chong. Okay, Chong to surge. Maybe that's a synapse. It surges. Or gallbladder 10, Fu Bai, floating white. What does it mean? Something white that floats. Doesn't it sound like myelin? Okay, so it's just kind of interesting. And then on the sanjiao, we have a number of points. Now that ranges from almost the back of the ear to almost totally front of the ear. But what we're seeing is the furious vessel. It's going too much, so it can be means a spasm. Now, it's often translated as convulsions or something like that, but it's actually a slightly different character to make it into a convulsion. That's how Andy Ellis uses it. But he's slightly
Who's using it?
Andy Ellis. Andy Ellis wrote Grasping the Wind, which is kind of like the Bible of translation of point names. No big deal. And then you have Sanjiao 19, the place where the skull is resting. Okay? And then you have one of my favorite points, the He Liao. He means harmony. Sanjiao 22 is the only point in the body that has the character for harmony, which is really interesting when you consider that most of us say that what we do with acupuncture is create harmony. And yet there's only one point with that name. Sandra 22 is an incredible point for mediating pain, things like that. When I say Sandra 22, I mean the whole area. You know, it's, don't take it just as one point. It's Sandra 22 and that point called Taiyang and maybe gallbladder 6 or whatever. It's a large area. But this whole area is very good at mediating the responses. And one of the things we want to mediate usually is pain. Okay? Then you have the area that goes from stomach 8 to the ear. So that's, you know, sort of semi-Shaoyang, the area that we talked about before that mediates responses. This area, when you look at it, you have 2 points with a character Xuan to suspend. Okay? And link, stomach 8 is a linking point. Okay, well, look at gallbladder 4, you're seeing something that, you know, when you use the chin, you can use it to say both yes, and you can use it to say no, right? Depending on which movement you're using. Okay, so it can also, you know, if you modify the character slightly, if you put the heart on the left, it will mean peaceful or content, which is how Andy Ellis translates the point. But it's a slightly different character, at least nowadays, as far as I know. So the character Xuan, if you can mute yourself, whoever it is with a child there. Sorry. So the Xuan means suspended. It means, so I'm linking and the contradictions, okay, a little bit like with the elbow. And I'm dealing with things, what happens when the mind gets suspended. And I'm going to make the case that there's 2 cases for that. One is a skipping heartbeat, and the other one is in stroke. And the other point that has the character Xuan to suspend is gallbladder 39. And gallbladder 39 is also a very good point for people with missing heartbeats, skipping heartbeats. Okay? So something in this area of this between the front and the side of the hairline, you know, the front of the hairline, but towards the ear, the sideburn area above the sideburns, has something to do with suspension and linking. Okay. Now let's look at the neck. So again, I'm doing this weird presentation of the points going from the ren on the left outwards. Okay. The point that's most central to me here is stomach 9. Welcome, human. Okay. So just looking at these points for a second. Okay. And what I'm seeing, so the one point that's kind of a little bit unusual here is large intestine 17, the ding. Okay, you're seeing a lot of heaven. Okay, first of all, very clearly, lots and lots of heaven. Okay, you're seeing a fountain, Ren 23, and you're seeing one that's heaven but has a clay pot. It's the stand for when you steam. When you're steaming your rice, you're putting it on a stand. Okay, so because it has to stand on something, that's ding. Okay, so what it's suggesting is that as we're steaming from the lower jiao, we're steaming the Jing towards heaven, okay, the neck is going to be the place before we reach the brain that things can like vent out. That's why we have 2 windows there. So we have the cooking stand at the bottom, and we're kind of, the purpose is that we're steaming. We talked yesterday about you take the qi where you're interacting with the world, you're steaming your jing, you're transforming your jing through the activities of the qi, meaning through your interactions with the world, in order to nourish the shen, to create experiences that are stored in the brain. In the middle, you have this neck, and you might have some sort of like venting out that happens, either through the chimneys or through the windows. Okay? But that process of steaming things upwards, okay, is the process of welcoming myself to be the person that I am. Okay? Without the action of qi, without experiencing the world and burning off my jing and creating my experiences, the shen, I'm not a human. I'm a useless human. Okay. So on the right-hand side, this is like a standard meditation chart out there. Okay, so you can see I'm not inventing this stuff. I'm interpreting this stuff, absolutely. Okay, so, and you can see the cooking stanzas. On the left side, there's one, and at the bottom, there's another one. Okay, so the statement in the neck is that the process of becoming human is that movement upwards between heaven and earth, from the earth upwards. There is a way to meditate from the heaven down, by the way. If you're doing, various types of Tai Chi or Qigong, there's a lot of people who promote the notion of the movement moving up the back of the body and down the front of the body. It's totally, it does exist. Okay, up and down. In fact, in this drawing, you see up on the back and down on the front. Okay, so we have to cook our Jing. We have to use this Jing that was given to us by the ancestors. Using the Qi, that's the stomach 12 that we saw in the first picture, the Qi She, the abode of the Qi. Meaning using the Qi means interacting with the world, vaporizing things, so as to create experiences, the Shen, storing it as memories, if you like. Okay? So those are the statements of the neck. Okay? And now, oops, I'm sorry. And let's move on. We are going to do the chest and the abdomen, etc. Let's look at the shoe points, because now we're starting to look at this movement upwards, right? So this movement upwards is going to have to do with the Du channel, which means it's going to have to do with a shoe. What does these shoe things mean? So there are shoe points for the organs. Notice the question mark here. I believe it applies to Gao Wang Shu, to UB43. There'll be a question on that on your test. There are 11 shoe points for organs, because the 12th, bladder 14, is not called pericardium shu. It's called Zhui Yin Shu. Okay? So what this slide is about is there are shoe points on the bladder that are not related to an organ. What do they mean? If something has a shoe point, it means it's an important function equivalent to an organ, equivalent to the spleen. It's as important as the heart or the kidney, but it doesn't have a real organ. So Zhui Yin. So the question is, what does Zhui Yin mean? Does it mean the liver and pericardium as a system channel? Does it mean something that, like fainting or flickering or gasping, which is what the character Zhui means? It's up to you to decide what you believe Zhui Yin means, because it's some sort of organ that doesn't exist, but it's some sort of function. It's an important function in the body. And we know, say, for example, in Shan Hun Lun, it's an important function. It's the place where separation, it's that flickering. It's the last. Zhui can also means the last thing. Okay, so what these point names are teaching us is that there's a concept in the body that's equivalent in importance to an organ. Gao Wang is another one. And now the question is, what is Gao Wang? Is it some sort of missing space in the chest, like a lot of TCM books suggest? Huang, the character Huang, suggests ancestors. Okay, because the character at the top means something that's buried in the body. What's buried in the body and still deserves a shoe point? That sounds like possibly my DNA. It's no longer alive. You know, my ancestors mostly are not alive. They're mostly dead. Okay, a few of them might be alive, depending on how old you are. But most of them, the vast 99.9% of them, are dead, because it's going back hundreds and thousands of years, your DNA, your genetic code. Okay, so something in your body that still influences you, that still moves inside you, but is actually dead. You can say that's the ancestors. And actually, UB43 is a very good point for genetic disorders. Or you can say some people interpret Huang to mean the fascia. Okay, so I'm not sure what Gao Wang.
Huang means what? The second?
Huang can mean ancestor. I'm interpreting to mean ancestor. Huang means something in the body that's dead already. That's what Huang means.
But there was another meaning?
No, Huang itself, as it's written, the top character means missing or dead, and the bottom means in the body. So Huang, if you're analyzing the character, it means something in the body that's missing or dead. That's all it means. So there's no, you have to interpret it to understand what it means. Now, it can also mean, people say Huang means fascia. That's an interpretation. When I say it could mean your genetic code, that's an interpretation. When people say Gao Huang together, Gao Huang together, they say it's the missing space between the heart and the blah, blah. I'm not exactly sure what they say. That's an interpretation of the characters. Okay? Then we have a shu for the do. That does not mean for the do channel. Have you ever seen somebody use UB16 to treat the spine? I have never, personally. Okay?
I did.
Well,
long
there's
ago.
always, yeah, no, there's always,
I did.
no, of course, because someone looks at the character and says, hey, it must work, and they try it, and then they create their own dogma, and it works because they have strong enough capacity, so it's going to work. And I'm not saying wrong, I'm just saying, I believe the do here means it's actually, this is the one character in Chinese that's translated very beautifully into English, supervisor or governor. A governor is somebody who's overlooking with their eyes the picking with the hands of the beings, the hands of other people, of course. Okay, so when you're overlooking the work of other people, you're a governor.
You say your last again, sorry.
Okay, a governor or a supervisor overlooks, supervises the picking of the beans. Okay, so someone else is picking the beans, and I, the governor, I'm overseeing it. Okay, so a governor looks very powerful, but the governor, think about the governor of India and Queen Victoria. The real emperor is Victoria. She's in control. The governor can be very important in India, but the governor is not the real big boss. The real boss is Queen Victoria. Okay, so in the body we have two systems that are like that. Okay, one is the autonomic nervous system, or the nervous system in general. It looks very powerful, but it's under the control of the brain. The brain is the controller. And the other one is the hormonal system. Looks very powerful. It oversees a lot of things.
The heart is the hormonal system, you said?
Hormones, yeah.
What is the hormonal system?
Endocrine system.
Yes, I know, but what's the organ related to that you said before? I missed that part.
No, I don't think I did.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't. What I said was that the nervous system is controlled by the brain, and the endocrine system is also controlled by the brain. So these are two systems, the endocrine and the nervous system can both be systems that we can interpret to mean do in the body. Okay, that's my point. And then we have a shu point for the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a very important function in the body. Without a diaphragm, there's no breathing. Okay, so these are what is important in the body. Next we're going to leave Qi Hai for a second. We have Guan Yuan Shu, okay, meaning the gate to the primary, the shu that has something to do with the head. Okay, the head is a very important function in the body. We can totally understand that. We have the Zhonglu Shu, okay, the spine center Shu, okay. So, sorry, this is not the wrong John. Yeah, no, it is. I just spelled it wrong. So this is the shu for the spine. We totally understand why the spine is equivalent to an organ. And then we have this thing called Bai Huan, bladder 30, which has a shu point. What is this Bai Huan? Okay, one is a ring. Okay, and in the Taoist understanding, the Bai Huan is some sort of ring that stores the essence. So let's look. If we look at the character Huang, it's ring. It's a king on the left-hand side. that's looking around, creating a ring. That's why it's given this more mysterious thing, the one in Taoist understanding.
Not a ring like a wedding ring.
Yes, something that
Okay.
goes around.
Okay. Wait.
Yeah, like a wedding ring or like an ice skating ring, or something that goes around and around. Okay, so this ring, I understand this to mean the ring that supports the pelvic girdle. Okay, basically meaning your perineal floor. And just like the diaphragm for breathing, the perineal diaphragm is extremely important in the body. It deserves the status of an organ. Okay? So what I'm trying to show you here is the shoe points that don't have organs, official organs, has something to do with that's very important. Now, let's look at Qi Hai Shu. Okay, I believe that's the next slide. Whoops, better. Okay, so with Qi Hai, what we're seeing, I'm looking at the lower abdomen, and I'm looking at the points at the bottom of the abdomen below Qi Hai, the 3 Tsun, the lower 3 Tsun. Okay, there's 5 Tsun, right? So the lower 3 Tsun, I have names like the great brilliance, big brightness, kidney 12. I have the North Star, the central pole, Ren 3. I have to arrive. I have the Qi Jie, the street of the Qi. I have the Dao, the pathway of the water. And I have a cave. This is the one point with Qi, by the way, that we looked at the very beginning, kidney 13. All these points suggest something that moves, that's hollow, okay? Hollow, empty, light, not congested. That's the bottom 3 Tsun. What are we seeing above it? We're seeing something that's focused. There's a mound here, something that's big, it's accumulating. We're seeing a stone, we're seeing fullness, and we're seeing just the character yin, the intersection of yin. What we're seeing at the top tutsun, the tutsun that's closer to the navel, we're seeing there's something that's heavier, not light and fluffy anymore. Okay, not so much movement anymore. The thing that mediates the two is Qi Hai, is Ren 6. The thing that allows you to move up and create more fluffiness and counter the heaviness is Ren 6. So let me stop the share and let me see if I can demonstrate this to you. And I apologize if this might seem a little bit odd. Let me see if you can. Let me know if you can see my abdomen in a second. Okay. Can you see my abdomen? Yes? Someone tell me? Okay. Okay. So what happens is,
We're fine.
okay, so if I can, I'm using my legs to lift my abdomen, but I don't want to be a Schwarzenegger. I don't want to be like this, tight. I can't even do it, okay, because I don't have the muscles. Okay, I want it to be fluffy in the lower abdomen, and then I can notice that if I stick my ribs out, I'm going to get tight around the navel. In order to counter that tightness in the navel, I'm going to use Qi Hai to lift up. So now, say if you're a belly dancer, you might be able to do this. That's Qi Hai, creating movement. Yeah? I'm finished being a belly dancer. So, does that make sense about, the concept of Qi Hai? Okay, I guess it must somehow make sense or not.
They're all mute, so you can ask.
Yeah, it's okay. No, but they'll raise their hand.
But they raise their hand or show something. Yep.
It's okay. All right. So now let's look at a few other shoe points. Okay, so we have 2 shoe points on the kidney channel. Okay, one of them is called Shu Fu. You can make the argument that this is the shoe points for the Fu organs. But the Fu organs, generally speaking, nowadays are written with the extra character on the left-hand side, meaning in the body. So it might be the shoe of the Fu organs, and I'll make an argument for that in a little bit. It might be the shoe point for archiving, because Fu without the organ, that's like the palace. Okay, like in Du 16, the Wind Palace. That's what this fu means. It's the place where you're either exchanging or the palace is where you keep the archives. Okay, so you'll see that interpretation in a little bit. And then we have the Huang Shu, kidney 16. This is the same Huang that we talked about in UB43, meaning possibly the ancestors, which makes here perfect sense because that's where your ancestors come in through the umbilical cord, or you get cut off, when you start your life. And then we have a Yao Shu, which is Du 2, okay, which is the low back shu. So we saw a Zhonglu shu on the bladder. Now we have a Yao shu. They're both back, shoes that have to do with the back. One specifically for the spine, the other one is more for the back as a whole. And then we have the 3 shoes that are in the shoulder that we talked about. These shoe points are what are needed to be relaxed and easeful so that all the other shoe points, all the other movements can operate in general. Okay? So, talking about this kidney 27, it's supposed to be possibly the shoe of the Fu organs. So there is, in Suan 58, it talks about the fact that there is 12 shoe points in the chest, 2 shoe points of the back, and 12 shoe points of the breast. Now, you go figure out what that means. It's hard to know. But what they are suggesting is that there are shoe points on the breast. Okay? So there are many ways to interpret that. Jeffrey interprets that to mean the kidney channel because of the Fu Shu. I am going to suggest that there is also a possibility of interpreting it as the stomach channel points. And here is why. Because if you look at the stomach channel, what you're seeing here is it starts at the top with the door of the chi. So it allows the movement. But what we're seeing is like we're seeing the build. Look at all these characters. They all have something to do with building a house. A storage building, a room. There's a window. Forget stomach 17 because it has nothing to do with nobody's needling it. It's an energetic center, but it has a center, and then it has a basement. Okay, so you're seeing the building of a house in the stomach channel point. Okay, so it may be the basis. Now you need a house for you. The rib cage is a house. It's the house of your breathing. So you can interpret it that way also. Okay, but could this house be what the Suan 58 means by the shoe points? Maybe. Okay. The other interpretation is to look at it as, kidney 27 being the shoe point of the Fu organs. And as you move down, you have other shoe points, but not including kidney, I think, you do need 6 of them. So yeah, all the way to kidney 22, and it will be in the same order as the back shoe points. In other words, kidney 26 will be the lung shoe point in the front, kidney 25 will be the heart shoe point on the front, the pericardium, the pericardium, the heart, no, the pericardium, the link shoe, kidney 24 will be the okay, however you do this, because I've never used it clinically that way. But, the idea is that you have the kidney 26 to kidney 22, there's 5 of them. So you're going to have 5 shoe points, going from metal to fire to wood to earth to water. Okay, that would be the correct way of looking at it. It doesn't really matter because I've never seen anybody actually use it that way. It's a theoretical thing. Now, we can also look at it, this shoe, this movement, this transportation as walking up. Kidney 22 is called Bu Lung, okay? The corridor, moving up all the way up, using the Shen and the Ling. So the question about the Shen before, about kidney 23 and kidney 25 being Shen points. Yes, they are Shen points. Using them to come to the center of life. Okay, look at the name of kidney 26, the elegance of the center, the accomplishment of the center. Okay, so I'm using going up the corridor through the Shen to accomplish my life, and then it gets archived. The palace is where you archive things, or you exchange it for the next life. Either way, you can interpret it many ways. So as a meditator, as you're using the softness, you're lifting your perineal floor, you're using the softness of the lower abdomen, then you're using Qi Hai to keep moving up softly rather than congesting down. Okay, we'll talk about the middle jiao in a second. Now you're slowly elasticating the chest bone and lifting it up through that process of going through the Shen to open up what we in modern times call open the heart. Okay, so we're creating this action of elasticating the ribs and opening our chest without opening it too much, so that the Shen can open and soften. Does that make sense? So that's different. That's why I'm saying I think the names of these points come from a meditation practice rather than suggesting needling things. You can take it for needling. That's okay. Okay. So now let's look at the middle jiao. What's happening there? Because we kind of abandoned the poor middle jiao. Okay. So what we have here, we can look at a lot of point names, but let's just look at the three names that are all called one. Okay, that's Ren 12, Ren 10, and Ren 13. They're called the central one, the bottom one, and the upper one. Okay, one basically means stomach. Okay, and it can be pronounced as one or guan. Okay, so they're also known as guan, which is the exact same pronunciation but written differently. And here what it means a pipe. So you can see there's a pipe in the body, and it means to take charge, to take care. Okay, so the middle jiao is that which takes care. Okay, of course, it's obvious that it takes care because it's the digestion system. Okay, it's the nourishment, So what we're seeing, the idea is that in the lower jiao is our core. It should be hollow, but there's going to be some solidity in it, and there's going to be an oscillation or vibration there to move up. The middle jiao we're going to take care and nourish, and the upper jiao is going to be movement, or the prana, the qi, interacting. Okay, so that's just a way to look at the three jiaos through point names with a slightly different connotation. And again, this all comes much more from meditation practices than acupuncture related. Okay, so we'll go through a few more slides and we'll take a break. So this is like a standard thing, that the human person is the interaction between heaven and earth. So what I'm suggesting, this whole thing is about, and that interaction of yin yang creates the 5 phases. So you have the yin from within the yin from the yang starting from the yin, the full yang, and the yin coming from the yang, which will be the metal. In the middle, you have earth. So that's what life, postnatal life, is about. Taking yin and yang, heaven and earth, and doing something with it. I'm going to make the case that our job or our destiny as human beings who are vertical is to push the ground down in order to grow out of it. Because if we just flop into the ground, we lost our connection to heaven. Our connection to earth is guaranteed. None of us fly. We're always touching the earth in some manner or another. Okay? But in order to touch heaven, I have to push down into earth to touch heaven. So that's the kind of like the theme here. Okay? If I'm doing that, if I'm pushing down and pulling up, there are 3 diaphragms involved. So now we're looking at the 3 dantians, not the 3 jiaos. Okay? The lower dantian, the middle dantian, which is the chest, and the upper dantian, which is the head. And What delineates these dantians are 3 diaphragms. Okay, the pelvic diaphragm, the chest diaphragm, and the vocal cord diaphragm. Okay, those 3 diaphragms are very important. Okay? So when we're looking at core strength, which is something people love to talk about, what is core strength? Is it Mr. Schwarzenegger? I'm not sure if that's really Schwarzenegger on the left, but is it that guy with a, you can say the abdomen is very beautiful. He's got beautiful muscles, whatever, if that's your taste, at least, But is that core strength? Or look at the balance of, the dancer on the right side. Now, okay, I'm a little biased, granted, but you can see that she needs core strength in order to be able to balance this way. So core strength is not the strength of the muscle. It's actually something that's much lighter, that's hollow. It's the lifting of the perineal floor. I believe I have a picture of a surfer. Okay, in a moment I will. So it's that space between the legs. Okay, it is not close to your navel by any stretch of the imagination. It's not even close to Ren 4. It's between your sit bones, it's that hollow space just behind the pubic bone, and it gets initiated by the legs. That's your perineal diaphragm, your perineal floor, and that's what supports your life, though that will be called the one, like bladder 30 by one shoe. Okay? In order to create that, you have to use your inner thighs. Okay? It comes from between the legs. Okay, you activating the legs, okay, in order to create the perineal floor, in order to support your spine. Okay, so let's do a small exercise. Okay, if you're sitting on a chair, send your heels down to the ground. Now, everything that I say, don't do too much of. Don't use the muscles so much to do it. Use your brain to do it. So give yourself the direction and allow it to happen. Send your heels down to the ground. Touch the ground. You'll need to touch the ground. That has to be physical. Now mentally send the knees away from your hips. Send the knees forward. Take stomach 30 and let it move slightly back towards the back so that the 2 hip bones are separating and widening away from each other. And that allows for more hollowing in the lower abdomen. So now your perineal floor is lifted slightly. The action, the sending of the knees away and the pulling of stomach 30 slightly back, the opening of the hip bones away lifts up the perineal floor. So your inner thighs are active. And now there's a lift in the spine. Now you may think as if there's a straw right underneath your perineal floor. If you're a woman, you can literally feel it as your vagina lifting up. And there's a straw just below your perineal floor, and you're sucking up, bubbling up in front of the spine. So it's very deep in the body. It's not in the front, but it's not on the Du channel. It's in front of the spine. The straw goes all the way up. And you will find that you can only bubble it up. You can only suck the straw up to a certain level. Most of us will get stuck somewhere, whether it's in the low back, in the shoulder blades. Some people can reach all the way to the throat. Okay? And you can let go. Hopefully you experience something. We all have different capacities of experiencing that. But I'm using the legs to lift the perineal floor to support the spine. And this is the picture I was hoping for. This surfer, so he's not a ballerina, and he's not quite a Schwarzenegger. He's somewhere in between, right? So the extremes are not here so much. What surfers do is they suck up the floor into the belly, and they're using the abdomen. They're using the core strength, the perineal floor, to control the surfboard. Okay, that core strength, the perineal floor, is one of the most important things that we have. That's that by one shoe, the perineal floor support that we need. Okay, so I suggest we stop now for a 5-minute break, although we can take questions first. So let's do that. Let's look at questions.
Yeah, I need to relax my brain.
Yes, I understand. I know. I'm sorry. I'm trying to finish on time.
Yes, but I agree with that. But I'm trying to cope as well
Yes.
as best as possible. But it's going quite great.
I'm sorry.
Don't have to be.
Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Il n'y a pas de questions, c'est merveilleux.
Everybody wants to take a break.
Tout le monde dorme. Tout le monde. Okay, that's okay. Take let's call it. Let's try and do 5. It will be longer, but let's try and aim at 5, because if we want to finish at 12, we really need to kind of get with it. So try and be back in 5 minutes. Okay? Thank you.
Go ahead.
So we are going to continue. Let me just share the screen. Okay. So one of the really important things that the next section is going to be, there's no more point names so much, so you can relax a little bit about all the Chinese and stuff. But I'm going to look at, we talked about I have to push down in order to grow up. This is one of the first things that I evaluate on every patient. Do they have what I call chuai? Okay? Chuai means to kick or to stomp. It means that the capacity of the foot, the specialization of the foot, and it has both a mountain above and something that reaches down. Okay, so Claude was talking about famous songs. There was a famous song called "What Goes Up Must Come Down." Chuai is the exact opposite. What goes down will go up. Okay, if you push down, you will grow up. Okay, so that's kind of like, that's what Chuai is. Chuai is pushing the heel down. It's the separation of kidney 6. And tomorrow we'll do an exercise with that. Okay, of pushing the heel down, lifting the internal malleolus up, and then what we did sitting down and feeling the inside of the thigh supporting the perineal floor. You can do that. It's much clearer when you do it standing up and using kidney 6. Okay, that's extremely important. Okay, for the person to have this capacity of using the legs. Most of us don't use the legs. We're just flopping all over the place. Okay, and it's not a muscular action, it's an awareness. Okay, so if on the other hand, your hand standing on your hands, you would have no choice but to push the ground. Okay, if this guy does not push down into his wrists, into his palms, okay, and you can see how pericardium 1 shows as a result, the heavenly pooling. Okay, if he doesn't push the ground, he's going to fall flat on his chin, on his nose. Okay, that's just the nature of it. Okay, so how do you know if someone has chuai or not? Do they have that push down into the legs that allows you to resist gravity that then supports your perineal floor? Because look, none of us as acupuncturists are going to, palpate the perineal floor. You don't just stick your fingers in Ren 1 and go, hey, you have good chuai. Bullshit. No, nobody does that. So you have to evaluate it in some other way. So look at these 2 women, and these are mild examples. I'll show you a more extreme example in a second. The patient comes, and if you're still doing that, because for example, I talk to people on Zoom and I only treat them on the table, so I don't get a chance to see them sitting anymore. When they're sitting in front of you, their heels are off the floor. They're not sending the heels down. Both these women don't have their heel on the floor. And what they're doing is they're sitting on their buttocks. They're not sitting on their thighs. They're sitting leaning back. Okay, so they're not forcing themselves to lift up. They're leaning back or they're curling. When they walk, they'll be slumping. They might be shuffling their feet. Okay? And as a result, often there'll be tension in the upper body because the lower body doesn't have that elasticity and hollowness that supports the spine. So then they have to grab from the neck or the shoulders. Okay, so you can kind of see more clearly with this woman, who's granted she's a painting, but it's very cute because you can see there is no chwai here. She's leaning back. She's kind of like, bleh, I just want to read my book. I don't want to do anything or whatever. I'm resting, and that's okay. You're allowed to rest, but she's not using her legs. If she actually has to go and do something, actually interact with life, she's going to have to change posture. She's not going to be able to move from this posture. Okay, it's a little hard because her legs are not there. Okay, so what points help the patient get that sense of chwai? Because if they don't have chwai, all the organs are congested because there's no lift. You have to create space for the organs. Before there's 5 elements, if you remember this slide, sorry, oh, it's quite a few slides before. Okay, before there's 5 elements on the right-hand side, there's yin and yang. There has to be the push and pull between heaven and earth, the yin and yang, in order to create the 5 phases, the organs. Okay, let's find that woman again. Okay, here she is. Okay, so it's extremely important to have chwai in order to create the space in which life, the activities of life can happen. So chwai is a character that appears in the description of the channels in Ling Shu 10 of the kidney, of the spleen channel, and of the bladder channel. So in the kidney channel, kidney 6 is a great point for chwai because physically you saw, if I push the heel down and lift the internal malleolus out, that's activating kidney 6. That creates chwai. On the spleen, especially spleen 3 creates chwai. Okay, if you push down spleen 3, the bunion bone down, you activate into transverse arch of the foot, and you're creating something inside your thigh. And on the bladder, especially bladder 36, and also the area of bladder 58, is an area that creates an upward movement. Now, stomach 41 also can help create chwai. It's slightly different because it's about the hinge. It's about how the foot is placed on the floor. Okay, stomach 41 is a great point for lots and lots of musculoskeletal issues because it allows you to readjust the gait, the posture. And the point that we call inner yin, which is basically liver 9, but on the kidney channel, that's not so much inducing the chwai, that's shuttling the chwai up towards the perineal floor. So now the perineal floor can be supported and lifted. So you need the chwai in order to create the perineal floor lifting, in order to support the spine, in order to move everything up the spine, create the space for the organs and for the Jing to move up the spine as we interact with the world and end up with the brain. Okay, so kidney 7, the name says to recover the flow. Okay, it's like you're skating and you need to recover it. So often what happens at kidney 7 is you'll have a little bump. If you slide your hand along the kidney channel from kidney 3 up, you will feel a place where you feel like the channel is dropping down towards your finger. That's kidney 7. Whether it's 2 tsun above or it's 3 tsun above or it's 1.5 tsun above, it doesn't matter. That's the kidney 7 by name and by function. It allows you to push the kidney channel back up. There's often a little bump or a little nodule at kidney 7, and you're trying to needle it upwards to help the chwai get reinforced. Okay? Then, so let's say I'm pushing down in my legs. Now I want to hollow and lift the perineal floor. Notice the word hollow. Okay, you do not want to use too much muscle. Okay, because it's impossible. Nobody can walk around holding the perineal floor all the time. It's something that's done more as first you start doing it from your brain and then it becomes a habit. So you create a postural habit. And that will support the spine and create the space of the abdomen. So the points that help do that are inner yin, liver 9, but on the kidney channel. And what I call side gallbladder 27 or side gallbladder 28, the name here is Wushu, the 5 axes, AXIS, okay, the 5 pivots, okay, or the way of linking, gallbladder 28. So these are points you're coming from the side in order to squeeze upwards, okay. I think I have a slide on that as well. And liver 4 can be a very good point. You can see here the connection in the name between liver 4 and qi jie, okay, stomach 30, okay. The inside, the jie, okay, is the same character that's the left side of feng. It means authority in both cases. Liver 4 is conferring authority on the center being the abdomen. And qi jie, the thoroughway, the street of the qi, that avenue, is walking with authority. Just like chong is to work with seriousness. It's a very similar character in a way to chong. Okay, and as you know, stomach 30 can be called either qi chong or qi jie. Okay, but liver 4 and stomach 30 are associated by name. And liver 4 is a great point to release the psoas because of that.
To release the what?
The psoas.
Okay, thank you.
The psoas muscle. Okay. So we've established, at this point, what we've done is we have established the push down in the leg with kidney and or spleen points. We are establishing the awareness of the perineal floor with inner yin and you know, side gallbladder 27, maybe liver 4. Now what we need to do, the person now has a habit of holding, let me take the share out for a second. Okay, so the person has a habit because there's no holding at the bottom, there's no basement. So the person is now holding, is going to be tense in the neck or the shoulder blades are going to have a lot of tension here. So you need to like relax it. Okay, so that to encourage them to grab, so to speak, the perineal floor. So you need to relax the tension at the top. So that's going to be very similar. Let me get the share back. Very similar to the idea of sending the brain back relaxed. So you're looking at what is going to relax the brain. Okay, and we talked about that those are these wind points, but of course, if the person's lying face up, they're not so accessible. Okay, so here are other points that what I call send the brain backwards. Now, in order for you to feel what send the brain backwards is, I know you're looking at a screen right now, and you can continue looking at the screen, but you don't have to. You can look somewhere else. It might be easier. Allow yourself to just open your eyes and do not send your eyes to see anything. It's easier if you're looking at the window. Okay? Don't try and bring the window or your kitchen or whatever you're looking at. Don't try and bring it towards you. I'm sorry, don't try and push your eyes towards it. Let it come towards you. So let your eyes sink backwards towards the back of the brain. Just the eyes are open, and you might see things a little bit what you might interpret as blurry, but you're actually seeing. You're just not used to this kind of seeing. We're used to sending our eyes out. Allow the eyes to relax towards the back of the skull. You can still see. You don't have to send the eye out. You don't have to strain. Okay? This is sending the brain backwards. Okay? So the points that help do that are Du 24, Sanja 22, and Bladder 2, as well as what in the tongue, the area that Master Tong calls correct tendons. Okay, so the correct tendons are the points in red here. Okay, these are correct tendon and correct ancestor. Okay, they're usually used together. They're on the Achilles here, but the Achilles tendon, I'm sorry. That whole black circle, which is sort of between the bladder and the gallbladder channel, I call that all correct tendon area. It all affects the back of the neck. It all releases the back of the neck. Okay, and as you can see, this is the area where you have a lot of points on the bladder channel that have either the character to receive, cheng, or yang. Okay, so this is an area of the body that has to do with receiving the weight of the posture and sending the posture upwards, yangwards, towards the yang. Okay, so why are we doing this? We're doing it so as to free the spine, to undulate, to allow the spine to move freely, so we can release the nervous system, so that we can activate the organs, as in the shoe points. Okay, so assuming we've given the body the message to use the legs. Now, remember, they're lying down. They're not going to be really using their legs now. You're just giving them the message that it's an option, it's a possibility. And you're giving them the message that it's possible to lift the perineal floor, that it's possible to relax the brain backwards. And now you want to give the message to release the nervous system and open the spine. This will be done primarily on the back. So the sacroiliac ligaments are very good for that. Do2 is very good for that. It releases the whole spine of the nervous system. The point that's called the center of the spine, which is at T11-12, I believe that's Do6. And then you have Zheyang at T7, reaching yang, and Shendao T5. Remember, I talked about these 2 points. This is all about sending the spine up. And then I'm opening the spine from the top through small intestine 9-10, between small intestine 9 and 10, slightly more on the body than on the arm, needled outwards towards the deltoid. And then do 16 to open the spine upwards. Okay, these are all points in my experience that open the spine. If you notice, T11-12 is a point where the spine shifts from lordotic curve to kyphotic curve. It's a change in the curve. And T7 and T5 are the height of the kyphotic curve, generally speaking, for most people. So I'm using the places where the curve is at its height or changing, because like a bow and arrow, if you're using the place where the curve has the most, you'll get the most vector from where there's the most curve. So I'm using the spine at the places, then Do4 will be another one of those, by the way, I'm sorry. But the places where the curve is at its highest, and there's the highest change in the curve, is going to be the places that the spine gets affected the most, where you're going to be able to free the spine the most. Okay? And looking at the sacroiliac ligaments, so the sacroiliac ligaments, it's not 1 point, it can be 3 or 4 points. It's between the sacrum and the ilium. Okay, so that's that green area here. That's the actual sacroiliac ligaments. Unfortunately, this is, well, actually, it's that light blue on the right-hand side. Okay, but on the left-hand side, you were seeing just the bones. But it's very hard to get in between the sacrum and the iliac bone on most people, especially on men, but often on women too. So what you can do is you can get the same ligaments on the attachment that's actually on the iliac bone. So it's a little more lateral. It's a lot easier. It's a lot fleshier. You don't have to get like a little crack in there. It's much easier to do it further out, and you're still releasing the spine. And you can also go under the iliac crest, and that also as a support, and that will support the support of the spine, the releasing of the spine. So those are the sacroiliac ligaments. You know, these are points I use tons and tons and tons of. We're going to skip all of this theoretical material here because I'll probably go through it tomorrow if we have time. And it's basically ways of justifying why it's so important to create the chwai and the upright posture, etc., etc., etc. So I think, yeah. Let's go to, so let's look at some points that are, we're going to assume that I'm correct, and shuai is a very important thing to do. You don't need the extra theory on why, you can establish it in your body. Okay, so kidney points that relate to shuai, because we know that shuai is related to the kidney, the spleen, and the bladder channels. Kidney 6, where the shuai is actually being initiated between the heel and the inner malleolus. Kidney 7, and yesterday we talked about kidney 6, sorry. Kidney 6 as the shedding light on my life, illuminating the ocean. Okay? It's the same idea here. Kidney 7, and if you can distinguish in kidney 7 and kidney 8, that's wonderful, but they're kind of the same for me. So it's about recovering the flow. So you can feel that something falls down in the channel or slips down. You see it in the name, and you can feel it with your fingers. And then at the base of the gastrocnemius is another place where there may be ability to establish shuai. Okay? And from the name, it's about establishing residence, the guest house. Okay? So the names are somewhat similar to this concept of shuai. They can be related to shuai as well. You have some other points on the kidney that I don't use so much for shuai, but they clearly suggest the same notion of moving upwards. Okay, so one of them is kidney 1, the bubbling spring. We talked about that. So, and that's the lifting of the transverse arch for the upright posture. Okay. Kidney 2 does not help the shuai, but it shows you what happens when you don't have shuai. When you're when you're pushing too much, what will happen is the navicular bone can fall down. Okay, so there'll be pain on kidney 2, or pressure pain rather on kidney 2. Now, kidney 2, it's called rangu, the burning valley, the blazing valley. But the character valley gu can be, some people say that this character could be a short for the character yu. Okay, when you're adding the yawning or the gaping need. Okay, yu means desire. So our burning desires, kidney 2 can be interpreted to mean burning desires. When I desire things too much, I push too much, my adrenals get exhausted, and then we can say adrenal exhaustion shows as pressure pain on kidney 2. And then you have another fountain, the water fountain. So, and again, kidney 5 is basically on the heel. So sending the heel down in order to generate a movement upwards. Remember, fountains are about generation, generating things. Then we have kidney 4. Now, this is an interesting point, and it gives us a slightly different view of the ankle. Okay, so kidney 4 is called the big bell. Okay, the bell, John, is metal. On the left-hand side, you see the character for metal. And on the right side, you see like a servant who is striking the metal. That's the bell. Okay, so it's like a bell or a clock. So first, remember this character for metal. But we have in the body, we have 2 clocks. Okay, so this is the big clock or the big bell. We have 2 clocks. One is the lungs, and the other one is the heart. They're constantly pumping. Okay. In the case of kidney 4, it's related a lot more to the lungs, to breathing. Kidney 4 is very related to breathing.
I'm sorry, repeat your last.
Yes.
Unfortunately disconnected.
It's okay. Kidney 4 is strongly related to the lungs, the ability to take a breath, to breathe in. Kidney 4 is related to that. It's related to the bell and the metal part of the bell. Okay. Gallbladder 39, which is on the opposite side, granted, it's 3 tsun above, granted, but it's still in the ankle area, is called the suspended bell, xuanzhang. Remember I told you that gallbladder 39 is a great point for missing heartbeat? It relates to the clock. That's more the heart, interpreting that clock as the heart, the bell is the heart. Okay, so you have to sort of ask yourself that these are the only two bells in the body. And you ask yourself, what is it about the ankle that creates the space in the chest? I'm going to leave that for you as a question. It's related to Chwai. If I push down, my chest opens. Remember when we allowed gallbladder 29 in the hip to just sink down, the chest sinks. If I open up gallbladder 29, the chest releases and opens. It's the same thing in the ankle. If I create the space in the ankle joint, I send the heel down and open up the space of the ankle, my chest will also open. I guess it's not a question anymore. Never mind. Spleen points that initiate the Chwai. Okay, so the first 3 points on the spleen all have the character white in it, including spleen 2, which doesn't have it directly, but if you see at the bottom right-hand side, there's the character for Du, for the metropolis. The character white is still there at the bottom left. Okay, but we talked primarily about spleen 3 as the great rising, that in order to rise, you have to push spleen 3 down. Because if you let spleen 3 off the floor and you roll over to the bladder channel, you can't send the thighs up. It just isn't going to happen. Okay, so there's a question mark here because there's going to be a question on your test about points. So there are no points with a character yellow on the spleen channel. Just remember that. And then we have points, just like with a kidney channel, they don't initiate the Chwai, but they help us recover the Chwai. When it sinks, it helps us recover it. We still have to initiate it from the foot. Spleen 9, the fountain, where often there is like a lot of chubbiness because all the weight falls into spleen 3. Okay, so it helps us resist gravity. We have spleen 7, which is the leaking valley. Okay, when things are leaking. And you could say possibly spleen 5 is a help because it's a mound. I'm exchanging, it's a mound of exchanging. So when things fall down, I'm exchanging it. But it's, in my opinion, it's less related to Chwai than other spleen points. Okay. And then on the bladder, this is the same slide we saw before. It's all the points on the bladder channel. So bladder 36, the one when it says bladder 35, oh, I'm sorry, that's a little bit different. Sorry. So we have bladder 36, and the whole area of bladder 56, 57, all the way down almost to 60. This whole area helps to, quote unquote, jack up the posture. Okay, send us upwards more. Okay. All right, so what I'd like to do now, it's 11:30. I would like to leave this section, which is basically the so-called practical section where I'm going to go point by point and give you indications for the point, like use this point for this. Rather than do that, because you can probably read it and understand it yourself, but you may have questions, and that's okay. I'm happy to do that. But in order for us to finish on time, we can do that after 12 o'clock, anybody who wants to stay. I'd like to do something that will gather everything together on the theme that we worked on today, because I know it's overwhelming. I'm kind of giving you this very philosophical thing here. So first, let's see if there's any questions. Too much information, questions cannot come through. It's fair. Okay.
Maybe.
No,
Maybe.
I understand.
Maybe a week from now,
Yeah.
you're going to have them in your email box, in your inbox.
Yes, China.
Vous avez parlé des diaphragmes, mais vous avez nommé
You talked about the diaphragms, and you said that the diaphragm on the throat.
Est-ce que vous considérez que le diaphragme au
Do you
niveau de la
consider
gorge est
that
équivalent
this
au
diaphragm
diaphragme
corresponds
vertébro-basilaire au
to
niveau de la tête?
the diaphragm between the vertebrae and basilar arteries?
Oh,
There's another diaphragm.
I would say it's hard for, I would consider it more here than here, but I don't know anatomy enough to be able to say anything. I would assume that if there is another structure here, that they're probably related. That they for example, I'm doing a lot of this from experimenting in my own body. So now you're giving me this idea. So if I hollow this diaphragm, it's like I'm breathing from here instead of from here. So I do this, yes, this gets elongated. So I can't say if it's the same structure, but I think those two structures relate. When I'm hollowing my throat, this gets elongated. Does that answer the question?
Parce que dans l'analyse
Because in the analysis
je
of
fais des,
I do
des diaphragmes
of the
au niveau
diaphragms,
plancher pelvien,
according to the
niveau
pelvic floor,
pulmonaire diaphragmatique,
compared to lungs or diaphragm, the
j'associerais
relation in between, I
plus
would associate
comme
those
le voile du palais
like
pour
the
le mouvement
inside the palate
crânien
with the cranial
et
movement,
non
Yes.
and not continue.
et pas vraiment le diaphragme
it's not
vertébro-brasilaire
really
comme on l'appelle communément.
the vertebral basilar diaphragm, which is anatomically probably different from the other one next to the throat.
The concept of the basilar diaphragm is not one I've heard before, so I don't know what that structure is. So I can't fully answer that. But this is that's why I'm experimenting with it in my body, that the throat diaphragm is anywhere from stomach 9, but it's also upwards. It is the palate. And I think the palate and the basilar artery is definitely connected from an acupuncture perspective in terms of, look, we say the do 15 is the root of the tongue, is the gate of speaking. So the palate and the basilar area is definitely related. But is it Western-wise related that way? I can't say. I would have to study it. It's my first exposure to that idea.
Merci.
Sorry. Anyone else? Okay, so what we're going to do for the next 5 or 10 minutes is establish all these things in our body. Look at all these point names in our own body. So find yourself a comfortable position. You can have your eyes closed or open. Before you close them, see if you can do this thing of opening your eyes and just not reaching with the eyes out anywhere and letting the eyes sink towards the back of the brain. So it sends a sort of wave of relaxation in the body. Then you can close your eyes. And start by establishing the perineal floor, awareness of the Huan, the Bai Huan, the perineal floor. So just use your legs ever so slightly, send your knees away and move stomach 30 slightly away from the knees, just to establish some activity in the thighs and hollow the perineal floor, all as a suggestion from the brain. Allow the lower abdomen to hollow, to empty, and become radiant. So now you're activating stomach 30, Qi Chong, the surging of the Qi, kidney 12, the great brilliance, Ren 3, the central pole or the North Star. The sensation here is one that is hollow, supporting the movement up the front of the spine. So feeling the very core of the front of the spine. So it's a good bit, it's behind your intestines. but it's still in front of the spine. So that Ren 4 is activated. So you're starting the journey, Guan Yuan, up to the primary, up to the head. I can support my head, my mind, by infusing space at Ren 4, the lower Dantian. Release the shoulder blades to relax down and in the back. And ease and stabilizing the shoulder blades, allowing the freedom of the movement up the front of the spine. Now just notice if your ribs, lower ribs, and the navel are pushing forward. They often are. And then modulate that mentally with an upward movement from the navel. So you're modulating so the movement between the navel and the ribs is not going too far forward, but you're not suppressing anything either. We're using an upward movement, taking care, Ren 10, 12, 13, modulating the movement upwards. So this is the action of Qi Hai in Ren 8, Shen Shui, the guard of the Shen, to give a sense of containment for the movement. Channeling it so it's not wild and out of control. It doesn't spill, the ribs don't spill forward. There's a sense of taking care and containment of the three ones, Ren 10, 12, and 13. And arriving at the move point of the heart, Ren 14, just below the ribs. And with that movement going up the front of the spine, noting that the floating ribs might also have a tendency to push forward. Let that movement of the breath flatten the lower ribs. So rather than the lower ribs pushing forward, let them be sent outwards, sideways, allowing the ribs to get wider and expand with the breath, sideways. And notice that this support of the lower ribs opens up time. It elasticates time. It slows down the sense of time. These are liver 13, the gate of camphor, of sealing the coffin, and the gates of cycles, liver 14. And then continuing this movement up into the middle and upper chest, allowing the intercostal spaces to open and expand, moving up the corridor of the kidney points on the chest. From kidney 22, the corridor, freeing up the Shen, kidney 23, 24, and 25, allowing it to blossom at kidney 26. As the collarbone lifts slightly, I give residence to the freedom of the mind. Like Shen points on the kidney chest, coming up to kidney 27 at the collarbone, recording the Fu and transporting. In the back, I keep the spine easeful and upright, still releasing the shoulder blades, the wind stabilizing, sending the area between my shoulder blades, that's Du 9, Zhe Yang, and Shen Dao, 25, to create a pillar for the body, sending the spine up between my shoulder blades, not forward, but just up, just as I did in the middle jiao, taking care not to jut forward, not to push too much forward, just moving up. And having all this support from the spine, from the legs, from the perineal floor, allow the throat to be hollow. It's a very quiet movement. It's free-flowing, and yet it's contained. From heaven up towards, from earth up towards heaven. It doesn't siphon or spill out violently. It's soft, contained, but continuous. I welcome myself at stomach 9. Welcome human. Releasing and lengthening the back of the neck. Again, the wind points. By slightly tucking the chin in, elongating the back of the neck to allow me to release tensions and distractions from the brain. The door to the mind, the door to the brain, door 17, is now open. And the mind can be hollow, empty, soft. Gallbladder 19. Now, Kong. Releasing the jaw, stomach 5, the great welcome. Releasing the nostrils, large intestine 20, welcoming the fragrance. To hollow the palate and support the ease and space of the throat. Activating the 3 welcomes. Nose, the mouth, the jaw, and the throat. Large intestine 20, stomach 5, and stomach 9. Relaxing the eyes, whether open or closed. Let the eyes relax back towards the back of the skull. Not pushing forward, not searching for anything. Allowing the world to come into me, into my field of vision. I'm not running after it, not running after things. Things can appear as they are. This is gallbladder 1. Tang Zi Liao, the virgin communication hall. Seeing things as they are, virginally. And it's also bladder 1, Jing-ming, bright vision or great understanding. Let go of the front brain, of analysis, and send the brain back. Release to 24, Shenting, gallbladder 13, Ben Shen. The top of my skull is now open, not seeking, not transmitting either. Byway to 20, receiving the light and receiving the soul, bladder 6 and gallbladder 19, are now communicating with heaven, bladder 7, Tong Lian, but not searching, just in alignment with nature, Tian, connecting with and aligning with the world, reflecting inside of me and surrounding me. I sit and I feel the space, the ease, the openness that I created, and I just reside in that space. When you find yourself distracted from enjoying that space, either tuck your chin and lengthen the back of the neck, or create the perineal floor, or create in the middle jowl, taking care, containing, moving up the spine between the shoulder blades, releasing the shoulder blades to the back. Play with these different movements to see what they do for you as you establish the residence within yourself. Je suis chez moi, je suis arrivé. Il n'y a qu'ici, maintenant, bien solide, vraiment libre. Je prends refuge en moi-même. Je suis chez moi, je suis arrivé. Il n'y a qu'ici, maintenant, bien solide, vraiment libre, dans la terre pure, je m'établis. And slowly come back to your own room. So that was a way to look at the points in a very, may not have been practical for you, but supposedly a very practical way as a meditation, which I'm suggesting is one of the ways in which the meridian system was constructed. And I'm just going to give you this slide before, this can be the end or not the end. It's up to you, but I do, because this is on the test and that happens to be one of the last slides, it's important that we go through it. The character ocean, there's 6 points, because here I'm putting 5, but there's also Chi-Hai Shu, as we saw. And ocean also implies that there's salt or minerals in the ocean. So when some people have what we might call a mineral imbalance, okay, so these are people who may, for example, someone who has psoriasis, and they apply, Dead Sea salts, and it helps them. Or someone who has really weird, they take lots and lots of vitamins and they're always messing up with the vitamins and stuff, and they're always feeling weird. Those kind of people, using any of these points, or usually I use all 5, and on both sides, would be a treatment that we call the mineral treatment. So this is a way looking at points, at a name of a point, suggesting a protocol. And then here's the UB43 again, the Huang, the character Huang in points. The top of the character means to die, or missing, or buried. So something that's dead already, that's perished, but is still in my body, that still has an influence in my body. It has a shu point, it has an influence. So these points have the character Huang in them, UB43, kidney 16, UB53, UB51. Of these, I would say I can't speak much for UB51. I don't have a lot of experience with that. But UB43 is definitely a point that I would use for people with genetic disorders. They inherited something from the ancestor who are dead. But they're still in their body. They're still influencing the body through their DNA, their genetic code. Kidney 16 is another one. And bladder 53 is called the uterus one. So it's a very good point for any uterus problems. And before we do that, well, we'll go through the Liao later if we opt to. That was part of the meditation. So I gave you one way to look at points that's very influenced by this idea of creating shuai, of pushing down to move up. Okay. But you can look at points many, many different ways. So we have a bunch of points that are called mounds. And I gave you here the different kinds of mounds. And the purpose of this slide is basically to say, all of these are burial grounds. Okay, something is buried. So the points are caves that something is buried in them. some knowledge is buried in these caves. What does that mean? And how can we uncover? It's a constant koan, okay? This is the character for koan, for a question that has no answer. It doesn't have to have an answer. We're just constantly holding the question, constantly looking at the point, the names, the relationships, and starting to make something out of it. And it's constantly changing. It's dynamic. So we're uncovering the mounds to figure out what is there to for us to discover. So if you guys want, I'm very happy to continue and go through that other section that we didn't go through. It will probably take 20 minutes. Okay.
When you were talking about do my 8.
Yeah. Are we going back to do my 8? Good.
Yeah.
Back
Yes.
to
Yes.
do 8. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, we'll go back to do 8. Okay, so in direct correlation, things that are direct, you see a clear relationship between the name and the function. There's not much thinking. It's the name says this, that's the function. People use do 8. The name is shrinking sinews. And people use it when you have contracted, when the sinews are contracted. People use it for that. Okay? So that was the category. These points were the category of points where there is a direct correlation between the name and the function people use it. The next set of points, it's not so direct. The name suggests a function. So there's a little bit extra stepping going on. So here are examples. Kidney 4 are used for breathing problems. The name is the big bell, da jong. The bell we talked about before has to do with striking the metal. Therefore, metal has something to do with the lungs. Therefore, kidney 4 is good for breathing. UB62 is called shenmai, the extending vessel. So how do I extend? And one of the places where the extension can get stuck on is the sacrum. UB62 is one of the best points to treat the sacrum. Okay? If you're talking about the sacroiliac ligaments, gallbladder 34 is a good point. But if it's the sacrum itself, the actual bone, UB62 is a very good point. Kidney 6, Jiao Hai, shedding light on the ocean, is also about extending to shed light. It also helps the sacrum. The name is less obvious than UB62. Also, this is something we did not go through, but the character Jiao, shedding light, means overcome a bent over posture. Means pain, but it also means, you can see the character, it looks like someone's bent over. Okay. The spleen 8 is called the earth machine. It has the capacity to create new cells, generate matter. Okay. So, for example, if somebody, say, has cancer or something, you want to help them generate new cells. You might consider spleen 8. By the way, my spleen 8 is the same place where the Master Tong people take the point that they call the kidney gate, Shenguan. Okay, I take spleen 8 about 2 tsun below spleen 9.
7718. The tongue number point.
Oh, very good. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I did a few
amazing.
translations for them too.
Yes, I know. So, liver 8. This is a little complicated, but the name is the bending spring. So first of all, by the name, it suggests that the liver 8, you should bend liver 8, the knee a little bit in order to find it, because you want to find a little nodule. The name also suggests that it has to do with bending and stretching. Okay, so when there's a movement of bending, stretching, something to do with tendons, I consider liver 8 a much better point for tendons than gallbladder 34. Gallbladder 34 is good for torque, when there's a torque in the body, a small twist. And yes, tendons get torqued very easily, especially the sacroiliac ligaments get torqued very easily. Okay, so gallbladder 34 is good for torques in the tendons. But if you're looking at strengthening the tendon or allowing the tendon to stretch more rather than getting rid of a torque, liver 8 is generally a better point. Now, because we're talking about liver 8 helping bending and stretching, the other 2 points that help with bending and stretching are the sacroiliac ligaments and stomach chi, meaning the bumps on the stomach channel between stomach 40 and 41. Okay? But the biggest use that I have for liver 8, besides tendons, is anybody who has a cyst or a fibroid, usually women, granted, liver 8 is almost, I can guarantee that liver 8 is going to be the most important point for them. Almost guarantee that. Okay? So what's going on here? When the fountain, the generation is stuck, when it's bent, things start to accumulate, you get cysts or fibroids. So you see how the name, I had to do an interpretation. It suggests the function. It's not clear. It's not like the window of the eye. It's very clear, the connection here. Here with liver 8, the connection is not so clear. It's a suggestion. Bladder 36, I use
Can I ask a question or should I wait?
You can ask a question, it's okay.
Okay, so about you said something about stomach chi and
Yes.
the knee and something about the nodules on the and I know how to locate the stomach chi, obviously, but is this to suggest that when we use liver 8, it might get the nodules to get smaller or
Okay, wait. Sorry. I understand what you're saying. Two separate things happening here. Okay. I was talking about the stomach chi are the points. If you take stomach 39 and stomach 41, along the bone, there may be some bumps.
Yeah.
We call that stomach chi because officially there are no points on there.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the stomach chi points. Those are points that we use when there's problems bending or stretching a joint. Okay. Just like liver 8. Okay. And the sacroiliac joint. So for example, somebody says, I have problems bending my knee. I won't use liver 8 because it's too close to the knee because I don't like going too close. I will use the stomach chi points and I will use the sacroiliac ligaments on the back.
I see.
Separately from that, liver 8 is a great point for cysts and fibroids.
Okay.
Now, yes, the stomach chi point, you might have nodules, bumps, but no, liver 8 does not shrink the bumps on the stomach chi line, as far as I know. But it does shrink and help cysts and fibroids.
All
Does
right,
that make
thank
sense?
you. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so two separate things. Bladder 36 is a great point. It's called receive support. It affects the posture, the musculature. I mean, it's so obvious. It's on the edge of your sits bones. I mean, now sometimes people don't like using that. So fine, use anywhere between bladder 36 and bladder 37. It's okay. Either way, you're affecting the hamstring and how the hamstring affects the rest of the posture. In my opinion, the best place is the line of bladder 36. It doesn't have to be on the bladder line. You can go all, from more inside the thigh, more towards the gallbladder channel. You may needle 3 or 4 points, but it's a great point for back issues, especially. But all sorts of, when you're seeing like this person has a weird posture, I want to straighten them out. When you do the back treatment, adding bladder 36 could be very helpful. Okay, so liver 12 and spleen 12 we talked about when we did that meditation, when we stood up and tucked the pelvis under. It's the hurried pulse and the rushing gait. They reflect the state of the autonomic nervous system. When you push forward, okay, there's a tightening that happens in the inner thigh that tightens the nervous system. Okay. And we also did the exercise for gallbladder 29, gallbladder 21, the residing liao, okay? The residence liao allows the diaphragm to expand. So giving off its resonance. So it allows us, number one, to take deeper breaths. So it's good for breathing. And it's also because it allows us to take deeper breath, open the diaphragm. It calms this, the autonomic nervous system. Large intestine 16 is called the gigantic bone, okay, which implies there's plenty of marrow. So I will say it does treat low back pain. It's not the best point for it, but it's a good support point for it. The reason why I include it here is because this is actually a great example how different people see points differently and come from different schools. So I was once in a class with a Vietnamese man who said, large intestine C is the sea of marrow. And of course, I'm a very critical person, so immediately I'm going, that's not true. Ling Shu 33, and we're going with a book in Chinese, showing him the sea of marrow says something on the side of the head, and do 16. It never says large intestine 16. And he it was, and then I went, okay, but he said it, he must have a reason. In his apparently in his tradition, in the Vietnamese tradition, somebody said, oh, it's a point on the sea of marrow. And so I looked at it and I said, oh, if it's a huge bone, maybe there's a lot of marrow. So do I think it's the best point for marrow issues like spinal issues? No, but it does support it, at least in terms of the spine up to now, from what I've seen. So it's just, always, we all come with our own biases, our own ideas. It's good to just open up and not be too clear about whose ideas are correct or incorrect, because at any moment a patient can come in and my ideas can be incorrect and someone else's ideas can be much more correct. So it's always good to keep it in mind and experiment. Okay. Lung 8, I use as a point to oxygenate the blood, to bring more oxygen to the blood. So I use it for like neuropathies or numbness. Okay, by the way, with spleen 3 for neuropathy or numbness. You can see from the name, it's called the channels and the ditches, meaning it penetrates everywhere, oxygenating the blood, bring more oxygen to the blood. It's kind of a cute idea. Sanjiao 8 is called Sangyang Lua. Now, I take Sanjiao 8 a third below the elbow. I don't take it on where the text is. And it's my main point for releasing the autonomic nervous system. Okay, you can see from the name, okay, the 3 yang networks. Okay, Lua, smoothing the yang, calming the nervous system. The nervous system can be very young, so smooth it, relax it. That's a name correlation. Do 13, Tao Dao, literally means the happy path. Sometimes people relate it to a pottery furnace, but that's a slightly different character. Okay, don't worry about it. But if it's a happy path, so it's a little bit like the lung 8, making the microcirculation easeful, happy. It's especially good for people, someone who has Raynaud's, okay, so they need a happy path, okay? If they heat up the area of do 13, do 14, like they take I take a sock and put corn in it, agricultural corn, and put it in the microwave for a few minutes. You put it on do 13.
You take what?
A
Corn?
sock.
Yes. Yeah.
In the sock, I put 3 cups of corn, agricultural corn.
Okay.
Not the corn
Okay.
you eat, not human corn. The
Yeah.
corn that you feed animals, because it doesn't pop. You put it in a microwave for say 4 or 5 minutes. So it's very hot. You put it on do 13, 14 area, and the hands are much warmer. The Raynaud people, my patients with Raynaud's, they all use this trick. Okay, so again, you're seeing this is a point that maybe needling doesn't get you so much better circulation, but energetically it's still useful, and there's still a therapeutic method to use it. Okay. Then you have stomach 9, welcome human, which is, first of all, it's a thyroid reflex. To be human, the thyroid is very important, and it's also what we call primitive reflex. Okay, meaning any primitive reflex in the body, like somebody who's just vomiting, you're not. It's a very primitive action. It's not like you can you can stop yourself from throwing up, but it's too primitive. Or the people who are like bulimics, for example, they just got to do it. It's a primitive thing. They will often show, it's a reflex that shows in stomach 9 those primitive actions of the body. Okay. Spleen 20 on the left side, in this case, it's called the thriving circulation. Okay. It's one of the cardiac reflexes. It's one point that I check when I know there's a cardiac problem. I will check it, and then when I use my points to treat heart disease, the heart issue, I will check that spleen 20 is getting better. It's not the only cardiac reflex. There's lots of others, but it's one of them. Stomach 24 is called the slippery flesh gate, and it treats pulsations at the navel. Okay, when the navel is pulsing, you can feel the aorta at the level of the navel, or a little below, sometimes a little above. So what you're seeing, the symptom is the flesh is slippery. You're touching the navel and you're feeling pulsation. You're feeling the artery. That's a slippery flesh. Stomach 24 on the right side is supposed to be a good point to treat that. I find that it's not the best point for it, but it still shows the possibility. REN 12, now this is a somewhat, again, complicated phenomenon, Zhang 1. 1 can be interpreted by some dictionary as meaning the fat in the bone, okay, the bone fat. What does bone fat mean? It means the marrow. Inside the bone, there's something fatty that is the marrow. Therefore, REN 12, as well as REN 10 and 13, and they really do, they affect the marrow and the spine. They're good points for marrow, which includes neurological conditions, and they affect the spine. That's a very good correlation, even though by name it's kind of roundabout. Okay. Small intestine 11 is called Tianzhang, the heavenly ancestor. So it's related to the Zhang Qi, ancestral Qi, the pectoral Qi. It relates to circulation, especially on the left side. It relates to cardiac conditions. We talk about spleen 20, small intestine 11 is another. The big difference here is small intestine 11 is not just a reflex. At the end of a cardiac treatment, I will actually surround small intestine 11 with needles and do moxa on it. I will never stimulate the heart before I do everything around it. That's the last thing you do, is the direct stimulation of the heart at small intestine 11. Sanjiao 15 is a great point for endocrine disorders. Some people will say it's actually small intestine 13. Fine, that's totally fine. It's just by name, Sanjiao 15, the Tian Liao, the heavenly bone hole, heavenly as in pituitary. Okay, there's a correlation there. Do 6 is called the center of the spine, and T11, T12 treats the whole spine. Again, it's like if you take the curve of the spine, the place where it's most curved, or the curve shifts most drastically, you're going to get a much stronger vibration throughout the spine than anywhere else. Okay. Kidney 2, Rangu, the burning valley, because we talked about that before, I can say that gu and yu, when I'm adding a little bit to the character, means desire. So the burning desires, it's an indication when there's pressure pain on kidney 2, that's an adrenal exhaustion indication. The name suggests that. Okay. Full yu, kidney 7. Okay, so this is where I'm looking for those bumps, where the channel is collapsing downwards. So this is a point I use. I use kidney 7 lots on almost everyone, because most of us, we have a prolapse, a bearing down of the posture. We're not having a good upright posture. Kidney 9, Jubin, the guest house. How can I play guest to myself? So it's a good point for addictions, good point to detoxify, to get rid of the unwanted guests, the toxins. Okay. Spleen 9, Yin Ling Chuan, and gallbladder 34, Yang Ling Chuan. This is when the dropping affects, moves down below the knee. So if you see that, you want a needle to again help the and in the case of gallbladder 34, it's going to affect the sacroiliac ligaments, that they're being able to move up. So the sacroiliac ligaments are not holding too much weight. Bladder 63, the metal gate, okay, is about, first of all, you can use it for when someone has metal in their body, like in their teeth or in their joints or something like that. Also, it's a great point for diarrhea. The diarrhea is coming out, if it's really like explosive diarrhea. Diarrhea comes out through the gate. The anus is called the gate of Poe. It's related to metal. It's the large intestine related to metal. Okay, gate of metal treats that. And it's also a very good point for boils. Okay, because it's related to the skin and metal are related. So you can see how the name and the function, actually in this case, we're looking at dysfunctions. Sorry, we just switched to. Gallbladder 39, we talked about that it's a suspended bell. Somebody who comes with an irregular pulse, meaning especially skipping beat, like regularly a skip beat, not like the pulse is changing rhythm, like it's a little fast, it's a little slow, it changes rhythm, fine. But it's skipping a beat. Gallbladder 39 is going to be a very important point for them. Now, yes, it's also because of the suspended business. Yes, it's also a great point for spine. It's also a great point for brain. It has other functions, but that's a function that I kind of like went, interesting, something to do with suspension, and it turned out that it's correct. That I can prove it clinically. Liver 5 is called the wormhole. So it's like an insect that's eating, making a hole. The worm is making a hole on the wood channel, meaning it's destabilizing the liver. So liver weakness like endometriosis or gout, moxa on liver 5 is a great treatment. And you want moxa because you want to smoke the worms, the termites. You want to smoke the termites away. So this is really a moxa point because there's not much space to put a needle in there anyway. Sanjiao 18 is called Chimai, is the madness or the spasm vessel. So it's used for spasms and for the autonomic nervous system. Now we're reaching pericardium 4. So this is the gate to Shi like Shi points, Shi cleft points. So you can call it the gate to the cleft. Okay, so this is a point that has to do with the autonomic nervous system. There's a crack in the heart protector. Okay, and to see pericardium 4, I'm using pericardium 4 not in the standard location. I'm using it about 3 fingers below pericardium 3, so much higher. This is my hand. On me, you can really see it. So you can see that there's at least 2 cracks in the pericardium channel, one about 3 fingers below the elbow, and another one about 5 cun below. Okay, so both of them I would consider to be Shimen, but the higher one is the one that I usually use. Very good point for autonomic nervous system. Also happens to be a very good point, we say, to send blood towards the abdomen. Okay. Now, here are names that suggest a location or an organ. So large intestine 2 and large intestine 3 are called the second space and the third space. I'm suggesting that it has to do with the second and third space of the colon. Now, small intestine 2 and 3 are called before and after. Before the valley and after the string. We have, by the way, before and after around do 20. Before the vertex, do 19, and after the vertex, do 21. Okay. So again, if I have a before and after, just like when I'm thinking about the large intestine has second and third, it suggests that the first 3 points of the large intestine are about the space of 3 spaces of the sections of the large intestine. Same thing with small intestine. it suggests the small intestine 1, 2, and 3 have to do with the spaces of the small intestine, the jejunum, the ileum, and the duodenum. Okay. Now, usually I cannot distinguish which is which. In other words, it's not like large intestine 2 is the transverse colon. I cannot say that. What I can say is that I will try, because I tend to like large intestine 1 and 2 together, or small intestine 1 and 2 together. I will try those two together and see if it affects the intestines. And if not, I'll try just large intestine 3 or just small intestine 3. Okay? But these are points that clearly affect the intestines. Okay? Stomach 22 is the gate of gates. This is the Oddi sphincter. So very, very important point for people with diabetes or any other kind of sugar imbalances. And sugar imbalances also means people who have muscle contractions. When a muscle gets too much sugar, too much energy, it's going to contract and then go into atrophy. Contract, go into atrophy. Eventually, it may end up as a spasm. Okay. Liver 4, we saw before, affects stomach 30 because of the name. Because if I look at Qi Jie, if I look at stomach 30 as being Qi Jie, the Jie has the same character as Feng in it. Okay, this is a pretty roundabout connection, but the truth is that liver 4 does affect the psoas. Okay, and does help you create the core. It's also.
Do you have to share your screen? I'm sorry.
Do I have to share?
Yeah. Well, you don't. You're just talking like
I'm
this.
just talking.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
No,
yeah.
no, no,
I
no,
don't know if there were
right.
slides associated to those.
There are slides. Yes.
Okay, because you're not sharing screen.
I am sharing.
Oh, I can see you. I can see you, but you're not sharing.
According to my computer, I am sharing. Let me do it again.
Oh.
Did something change?
Là, il n'y a plus de partage d'écran pour moi.
Okay.
Non, il n'y a plus de partage d'écran. Ah, OK.
Là, c'est
Now
correct.
you're back.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was not aware. On my computer, it looked like I was sharing.
Sur le mien, c'était correct aussi. On mine, it was okay, it wasn't sharing. Maybe it was closed, I don't know, but it's okay.
The wonders of Zoom. You know,
Yeah, it's okay. You can carry on.
in 200
Thank you.
years, somebody will do a lecture on Zoom. So, the ancients, how they used Zoom. So with liver 4, the character Feng, it's called the seal of the center. This seal appears also in stomach 30. And it's true that liver 4 affects the psoas. It's also, it's supposed to affect the center. It's supposed to be to give authority, to confer authority on the center. What is the center in the body, the core of the body? It's basically around the pubic bone, the psoas, stomach 30. So the name correlates both to another point and by the name itself without correlating to another point. Liver 9 is called yin bao, the yin wrapping. Okay, to wrap the yin. That's basically the name for the bladder. So liver 9 is a very good point for bladder or the uterus or the perineal floor. If liver 9 does not do a great job, go to the kidney channel. Take the same level on the thigh and go to the kidney channel. Maybe that will do a better job. One of them probably will. If you go on the liver channel, it also happens to be a good point for eyes. Okay, but not related to the name, so not related to the subject. Ren 3, it's called the central pole, Zhangji. If you have a pole in the center, something in the center, it's going to affect the extremities, the outside. So sometimes people have pain, problems in the fingers or the toes. Sometimes Ren 3 will do a good job for it. Okay? And you can say it comes from the name. Of course, if you have there are other ideas that you can apply here. You can say treating the center to treat the outside. It's treating yin to treat yang. Okay, so you can do it. You can say that it's like a mirror, which like the dung people and the tan people really like. That's a perfectly valid way of doing it also. I'm just doing it from the name, that's all. And Sanjiao 3 treats the mastoid, okay, and therefore the atlas. The character Zhu it's like a sandbank Okay, like if you're on the river, there's a bank. So you have a bank. The occiput bone is like a bank, not a bank for money, but a bank for, you know, like a river bank, like a beach. Okay. And oh, sorry, I can't go to the next slide until okay. Now let's look at points that share a name and therefore might treat each other. Okay. So stomach 13 treats stomach 30. Liver 4 treats stomach 30 for the psoas. Stomach 13 treats stomach 30. Okay, they share the chi part of the name. When a person, you know, either has a very big lordotic curve or they're very, very big and everything falls down into the inguinal groove. Okay, so then stomach 30, we're trying to lift it up. Okay. Spleen 15 is called the horizontal bone. Okay, so we have, I'm sorry, the great horizontal, and kidney 11 is called the horizontal bone. They help treat each other, and kidney 11 also treats stomach 9, which is also a horizontal bone. Okay, the name is not horizontal bone, but the hyoid bone is a horizontal bone. So these 3 points, spleen 15, kidney 11, and stomach 9, each affect stomach 9. Sorry. They each affect each other. Oops, I think that's Jana and and Claude talking, helping the translation there. All right, stomach 34, Liang Chu, okay, is helping stomach 21, Liang. It's the beam, okay. The beam gate, stomach 21, is being treated, can be treated by stomach 34, which is the beam, the mound of the beam. So the beam is the common shared part of the name, and one treats the other. Bladder 35 is called Hui Yang, the meeting of Yang, and it treats the T7 do 9 area that's called Zhe Yang, reaching Yang. Now, it works especially well. Left bladder 35 treats the whole liver area, which is T7, T8, T9 on the right side. Left bladder 35 for right UB18 area. Okay. Stomach 44, here they're sharing the carotid ting.
I'm sorry, something is wrong with my microphone, Avi. I couldn't translate for probably the last 30 seconds or so. Okay. Something happened, it was not the jack itself, on my computer, it was something else that happened.
Okay.
And I totally lost your audio for the last 30 or 45 seconds.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Stomach 34 or bladder 35? Which one do you
Stomach 34.
Okay. Stomach 34 and stomach 21 share a name, the liang, the beam, okay, that goes across. In stomach 41, that beam, the beam gate, presumably refers to the pancreas. It's a beam across at the exact same area. In stomach 34, it's the beam, it's the mound that gets created by the beam's mound. I'm not sure what it really means, but stomach 34 can treat stomach 21. Okay, so we're seeing where 2 points share a name and one can treat the other. Bladder 35, the name is Hui Yang, okay, the meeting of the yang. And do 9 is called Zhe Yang, reaching the yang. Bladder 35, by the buttocks, by the anus, treats the T7 area, okay, the do 9 area. Especially left bladder 35 treats the right UB17, 18 area. In other words, it treats the liver area on the right side. Okay. Stomach 44, another name share, Nei Ting, the inner courtyard, works well together with Do 24 Shenting. Tomorrow I'll give you one of the protocols for emotional disorders where I'm using both points. Kind of like stomach 44 is considered a ghost point by Sun Tzu Miao. Do 23 is a ghost point, not Do 24, but by name it's Do 24, works with stomach 44. And then we have Du 23, Shanxing. This is and the name is not exactly shared here, but the upper star, Du 23 is the upper star, and Ren 3 is the central pole, which means the North Star. Okay? The name is not the North Star, but it implies the North Star. So upper star, Du 23, can treat, Ren 3 can treat the bladder. Okay? And we talked before about the ocean points that, here are 5 points that all have ocean and they treat mineral issues. And we talked about the Wang points that we're taking the character Wang and we're analyzing and we're saying, what does this mean? We don't know what it means exactly, but it's something that's dead, that's in the body. Therefore, possibly has to do with genetic disorders. Okay? So, and the last thing I want to say, so we have 15 points, I believe, that have the character Liao. Okay, now we all know the bladder 31, 32, 33, 34, the 4 Liaos, but there's another 11 of them. Okay, and people ignore this character and they translate it as a bone hole. What I'm suggesting here, and this applies to, I am especially interested in it because of Sanjiao 22, but it applies to other Liao points. Liao means a bone plus this thing that moves through, like the sound of the wind. It's like you blow the wind through a conch or something like that. Okay, so what does it mean? It means that you're emphasizing, okay, when you blow through a conch, you're emphasizing, you're creating more movement. So Liao is the name Liao suggests not just that the bone has a dip in it. Sometimes that's what it means, but sometimes it might mean that it has the capacity to emphasize. So when you're looking at the bladder 31 through 34, and yes, there are little holes in the sacrum, but it's also you're communicating with the parasympathetic plexus of the sacrum, which means that you're creating a huge effect. You're emphasizing the effect on the whole lower abdomen as well as the lower limbs. So that's pretty much the class. We are done and we can go for questions if people have any. Feel free. Yes, Melanie.
Oui, Claude, je vais avoir besoin de ta traduction. Donc, je veux juste être certaine que j'ai bien
She wants to make sure that she understood properly that
si je veux relaxer le psoas à
if I
gauche,
want to relax the left psoas muscle,
je dois traiter le 4 fois
I have to treat liver 4 on the opposite side?
No. Same side. Same side. No reason to switch sides.
OK. Mais il y a quand même les dernières diapositives qu'on a vues, on faisait en croisé, hein? Les points. Est-ce que c'est clair? Claude?
I'm having her.
What did she say? I know croisé. I know what croisé means. I didn't understand.
I'm waiting for her.
Fais juste le répéter, Mélanie, pour Claude,
Ouais.
il n'a pas entendu.
Donc, dans les dernières diapositives,
In the last slides,
on traitait en croisé.
we would treat across, you know?
C'est ça?
Ou c'est non? Non, pas.
Okay. This is a question of your own style. My style, the way I tend to think, is almost always same side. I don't do this croisé thing, the opposite side. Not my style. Sometimes, yes, but very rarely. Liver 4 for the stomach 30, same side. Sometimes things will switch. But for example, many people, so this class is about the point names. Okay, now, but I can only speak from my experience. But there are many people who love to cross because you have to cross because if you want to balance yin and yang, You have to balance the left with the right. The problem is on the right, go to the left. Fine. But I can't say, unfortunately, I can't say that I can't say that's how you do it. I can only tell you how I do it. I'm speaking from my experience. My experience is same side. With all the points we talked today, there was only 2 exceptions. One is bladder 35. The left bladder 35 treats right bladder 18. That was an exception. And the other exception I didn't talk about, Sanjiao 8 releases the SCM on the opposite side. That's a point that I will cross. Everything else, mostly, it's very rare that I cross because I'm not looking, I don't have the same idea of balancing yin yang, upper and lower, right and left. That's a different school of thought. Okay? Doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's just not me. Anyone else? Okay, you guys need a big lunch and a big siesta.
Yeah, I think we are good.
So I will see some of you tomorrow. Thank you so much. And enjoy your afternoon. And it's sunny here. It's cold, but it's sunny at least. So I hope you enjoy your afternoon.